Chapter 2667. Mo Lusheng, who was sitting on the dragon throne in the main hall, saw his son's good-for-nothing appearance and couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Hu Dequan, who was standing at the side, saw this and hurriedly stepped forward. He took out a small purple gold cauldron from his sleeve and presented it to the great emperor with both hands. Mo Lusheng nodded. Hu Dequan reached out and opened the lid of the small cauldron. He brought the small purple gold cauldron in front of the great emperor and let Mo Lusheng take a breath. Arbor cast a cold glance in that direction. A faint fragrance wafted into her nose, causing Qiao Mu to involuntarily crease her brows. Her fingertips brushed lightly, and a faint medicinal fragrance flowed, immediately sweeping away the fragrance. She didn't like to be contaminated with some inexplicable smell. Mo Lien held her hand and paused slightly, then raised her head to look at her father on the throne. At this time, Hu Dequan had already taken back the small purple gold cauldron, and the great emperor's expression seemed to be much better, putting down the hand that had been rubbing his head. The young couple silently looked at each other, and couldn't help but shift their gaze to Hu Dequan. The latter's body stiffened slightly under their sharp gazes, and the chubby claws under his sleeves couldn't help but tighten. What happened? Why were the crown prince and crown princess looking at him with such sharp gazes? Hu Dequan felt a trace of inexplicable fear. He was really scared out of his wits by those two masters along the way. Now, he wanted to be on good terms with the crown prince and crown princess. How would he dare to offend them? At this time, he was even more confused. But fortunately, the young couple glanced at him and immediately retracted their gazes. The steward of the Sun Moon Palace took a step forward and bowed to the young Crown Prince Consort. Your Highness the Crown Prince Consort, I am Steward Wen Quan of the Sun Moon Palace. Arbor immediately understood why the Crown Prince wanted to bring her to Qian Yuan Hall. Manager Protector Wen Quan continued, Crown Prince Consort, please allow me to apologize to you. On behalf of my saintess, I would like to express my deepest apologies for my rude words earlier. Now, the saintess has received the punishment she deserves. Do you think we can, not dead? Arbor turned to look at the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince shook his head and asked, do you want her dead? Arbor nodded. Everyone was suddenly speechless. They secretly raised their heads and glanced at the cruel couple. What kind of godly development was this? Wasn't someone apologizing to her and begging her to let the saintess off? But this, the little crown princess suddenly said the two words, die, in all seriousness, causing everyone present to feel a chill run down their spines. Why did this scene suddenly seem a little funny? It should have been a very tragic thing, but when the crown princess said it so bluntly, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Manager Wen Quan was stunned for about 3 seconds before he hurriedly said, Crown Princess, no. Sir Jojo stretched out a small palm and made a shut-up gesture. Crown Prince Mo lowered his eyes slightly, suppressing the urge to laugh in his belly. Nie Yaoguang spread rumors the moment she entered the capital, saying that I'm a disaster. Arbor said mildly. I think before she said this, she was already prepared to die. Everyone, we actually have nothing to say in response. When Quan saw her determined expression, as if she really wanted to kill Nie Yaoguang, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Chapter 2668. Crown Princess, the temple is willing to use 1/10 of Chess Mountain's mining rights in exchange for the holy nun's life. Manager Wen Quan had no other choice and hurriedly brought out his trump card. As soon as these words were spoken, all the ministers in the hall began to whisper to each other in whispers. That was 1/10 of Chess Mountain's mining rights, which brought a lot of benefits to the imperial court every year. With so many spirit stones, it was enough to supply 10,000 people in the elite camp. A minister standing behind the king of Giant Pain quickly elbowed the king of Giant Pain's waist. The king of Giant Pain's face was dark, and he didn't want to speak. Hadn't he suffered enough losses at the hands of the young couple? Whoever opened their mouth would be unlucky. He wasn't a big fool, so why should he jump out and be the bird that stuck its head out? Prince Kong stood beside the king of Giant Pain. Seeing the king of Giant Pain's expression of I'll hold it in, I'll hold it in, I'll hold it in, he couldn't help but secretly twitch the corner of his mouth, thinking, the youngest IQ has risen in a straight line. Today's matter, he actually didn't jump out and criticize the crown princess. It can be seen that he's starting to grow brains. No matter how Prince Kong ridiculed, the king of Giant Pain stood there calmly, watching the show without moving. Are you kidding me? Criticized the crown princess. He still freaking owed the crown prince consort a debt. If he criticized her now, wouldn't he be in a hurry to be criticized back? Moreover, he would definitely be forced to repay the debt in advance. He wouldn't say anything. Whoever wanted to fight for this 1/10 of the spiritual stone mine for the imperial court would have to fucking do it themselves. The official behind the king of Giant Pain was somewhat anxious. He glanced sideways at the few imperial censors behind him and saw that each and every one of them was looking down at their noses. It was obvious that they would not open their mouths to speak. He could not help but feel stifled. What was going on with these imperial censors, who were usually the last ones to jump up and down to criticize others? Recently, they were so well behaved that it almost made people suspicious. Lord Jojo turned to look at the crown prince, but the crown prince shook his head at her and said, "Up to your mood." Obviously, that 1/10 of the spiritual stone mine's mining rights, to Prince Mo, wasn't even worth a single strand of hair on his wife's head. The ministers silently glanced at His Highness the Crown Prince. His Highness's attitude of spoiling his wife was to the heavens. Left Prime Minister Qin Shaoji was over 50 years old and had a strong body. Seeing that no one dared to speak, he stepped out of the crowd and bowed to the great emperor. "Your Majesty, I think that we can consider the Divine Hall's offer." The great emperor waved his hand. Let the crown prince handle this matter himself. Thus, everyone shut their mouths. The great emperor's words revealed his intention to protect his own. It couldn't be any more obvious. This meant that the crown prince and his wife would be fully in charge of the Divine Hall. Regardless of whether they accepted the compensation or not, it was the crown prince and his wife's business. Chen Shaoji frowned and turned to Prince Mo with cupped hands. "Your Highness, the 1/10 mining rights of Chess Mountain, to us." Arbor suddenly interrupted Chen Shaoji, her crisp voice resounding in the hall. "He also wants to give us 2 quotas to enter the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm," the crown prince added. Arbor turned and glanced at the crown prince. Although she didn't know what the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm was, since her husband had mentioned it, he must have his reasons. The Sun-Moon Divine Hall's guardian was so angry that he was trembling all over. Even the tips of his fingers couldn't help but tremble. He was angered by that couple. An exorbitant demand, absolutely exorbitant demand. Chapter 2669. Who would have thought that this couple would be so shameless? They really dared to say anything? Half of the mining rights of Chess Mountain Spirit Stone Mine. They were really impressive. They asked for half of Chess Mountain's mining rights right away. What a fool's dream. And I want to choose this half of the area myself, Arbor added. The custodian was so angry that he didn't want to say another word to her. Not only did this whimsical couple want half of Chess Mountain's mining rights, but they also wanted a spot to enter the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm? How was that possible? The Sun-Moon Mystery Realm was the best cultivation place that the Sun-Moon Temple had. The Mystery Realm opened once every 10 years, and it was never open to people outside the temple. What made them think that they could get a spot to enter the Mystery Realm? Sir Jojo blinked and nodded his little head in approval. And a spot to enter the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm. Although he had never heard of this Mystery Realm, any place that had the name of a Mystery Realm would definitely have great opportunities and treasures. Sir Jojo felt that it was good. Don't even think about it. Custodian Wen Quan, who was panting, couldn't help but roar angrily. Then let's not talk about it. Sir Jojo waved his little hand and shouted, "Men! Bring Nye Yaoguang here and execute him immediately." Everyone fell silent. The little crown princess was too dramatic. She didn't even give others a chance to think before saying this. The officials silently glanced at Steward Wen Quan, whose head was emitting green smoke, and lowered their eyes one by one without any moral integrity. Faced with such a bad attitude, the steward and the protector were so angry that they were about to ascend to the heavens. However, the crown prince was right beside the little crown princess. Looking at the crown prince's protective expression, if he dared to yell at the little crown princess, He would be the next one to enter the barrel of bliss. Forget it, he had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. He couldn't afford to offend him, so he could just hide. Holding his breath, the custodian nodded with great difficulty and said, This matter is of great importance. I must ask the hall master before I can make a decision. The little crown princess nodded. All right, go back and think about it. Give me an answer before tomorrow morning. If you exceed the time limit, I will send you the sage nun's head. Everyone fell silent again. Manager Protector Wen Quan gnashed his teeth in anger. If he didn't make this trip today, the young crown prince consort might have already forgotten about Nie Yaoguang. Instead, it reminded this strange crown princess that she wanted to kill Nie Yaoguang. Was he rushing here to be tortured? The people from the Divine Hall were so angry that they left the hall without looking back. The Heaven Origin Grand Hall quieted down again, without a trace of sound. The strange crown princess said to the emperor, Father, if there's nothing else, my husband and I will go back first. We'll come to see you in 2 days. Mo Lusheng looked at his daughter-in-law speechlessly. Pui, not a daughter-in-law. She hadn't passed the 3rd test yet, so she wasn't a daughter-in-law. After saying that, Lord Jojo stomped in front of Hu Dequan and stretched out a white and tender hand. Hu Dequan was baffled and asked with trepidation, Crown Princess, what do you want? Mo Lusheng waved his hands speechlessly and sighed. Give that purple gold cauldron to her, give it to her. Hurry and send this weirdo away. What to do if it stings my eyes? Chapter 2670. Hu Dequan had an incredulous expression on his face as he reached out to take out the purple gold cauldron from his sleeve and handed it over to Lord Jojo with trembling hands. This strange little crown princess even wanted to freaking steal the emperor's medicine. Too shameless. Her shamelessness knows no bounds. Mo Lien lowered his eyes as the corners of his mouth twitched imperceptibly. He thought that Imperial Father must be on the verge of a mental breakdown right now. However, Lord Jojo must have her own reasons for doing this. He definitely had to support his little wife. Arbor received the purple gold cauldron from Hu Dequan with a serious expression. Seeing Hu Dequan's trembling appearance, he couldn't help but frown. I won't eat you, what are you trembling for? All the officials in the hall looked up at the sky, speechless. Was Eunuch Hu trembling in fear? This strange little crown princess, can't you tell that she's trembling in anger? Arbor took out a small white porcelain bottle from his pocket and tossed it to Hu Dequan. 1 pill every 3 days. Don't overdo it. After saying that, he didn't care whether the dazed Hu Dequan understood or not. He directly turned around and stomped back to the crown prince's side. The crown prince beamed as he held her little hand and waved at Hu Dequan. Remember the crown princess words. Give it to Imperial Father. Then, the young couple walked out of the hall hand in hand. When they passed by the king of Giant Pain, they didn't forget to turn to glance at him and say, Imperial Uncle, remember to pay your debts. Our eunuch Chin is out collecting debts every day. It's very tiring. You must all be more aware and don't give us trouble. Imperial Uncle, did you hear what my wife said? The deadline is almost up. Remember to quickly prepare it and send it over. Don't make everyone look bad. Strange, why did the king of Giant Pain suddenly tremble as well? The young couple looked at each other and walked out while muttering. Husband, the people in the hall are always trembling. I think it's because they're weak and can't sleep at night, causing some neurological disorders. Mo Lien's mouth twitched. Do you have medicine? I'll fucking cure your sister. The ministers cursed in their hearts in anger. Was his body weak? This weird couple, they were just angry, okay? It wasn't until the two of them left that the palace regained a bit of life. The right Prime Minister Gao, glanced at the Prince of Giant Pain, who was standing beside him, trembling with anger. The corner of his mouth twitched as he comforted, Your Highness, don't be angry, don't be angry. The little crown princess is still young. Children don't know any better. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Jojo's section break. Taiji Palace of Phoenix Emperor City. As Duan Yu flipped through the invitation letter in his hand, his gaze landed on a certain heir sitting across from him, who was leisurely sipping tea from a cup. You're going too? Prince Qing put down his cup and nodded. Must I go? The crown prince of King Qing nodded again. What's the point? Rong Qing gave him a clear answer. When the three provinces gather, the winds and clouds change. Whoever obtains first place on the heavenly prime roll will be able to obtain large amounts of resources and benefits for the province they belong to. This is a checkpoint to test each prince's ability. So, the crown prince and the second prince also have to go? Rong Qing shook her head. Those who weren't chosen naturally can't go. Duan Yu nodded, and his eyes brightened. They will also go? Rong Qing looked at him in confusion. Chapter 2671. Members of the Divine Province's Imperial Family. As long as they are talented enough, they will be invited. That bastard will definitely be invited, Duan Yu murmured with certainty. If he is invited, the little fellow will definitely go as well. Rong Qing glanced at His Highness. Are you talking about the Crown Princess of the Divine Province? If the Crown Princess cultivation isn't high and she doesn't have any special skills, she probably won't be invited. Duan Yu glared daggers at Rong Qing like he was looking at an idiot, but the latter was baffled. Go ask around and see if they are going or not. To say that his JoJo's cultivation isn't high, pooh. Rong Qing was instantly speechless. You aren't trying to say that if those two from the Divine Province aren't going, you won't go either? Duan Yu nodded. That's right. His matter-of-fact attitude was simply baffling. Rong Qing glanced at the willful His Highness the Fourth Prince helplessly and obediently went out to ask around. On the other side, Arbor and the Crown Prince boarded the return carriage and squeezed to the Crown Prince's side. She looked at him curiously and asked, Is there some great treasure in the Sun-Moon mystic realm? The Crown Prince couldn't help but chuckle. I heard that there is a pair of very powerful weapons that have been passed down for several millennia. Oh? Can it be more powerful than my ferrule? That is a weapon created by heaven and earth and formed from the essence of the sun and moon. It is naturally much more powerful than man-made weapons. Arbor's heart skipped a beat, and she looked down at her palm. What is it? Mo Lien asked in confusion. The little fellow shook her head and raised her head proudly. I also have a weapon that is naturally formed. I estimate that it is also several millennia old. Prince Mo blinked. Can you call it out for hubby to see? Sir Jojo instantly drooped his head like a wilted eggplant. I can't call it out for the time being. Prince Mo couldn't help but chuckle. He hugged her and rubbed her head. It's fine, we'll talk about it when you can call it out. Arbor nodded and asked curiously, since that pair of weapons is so powerful, why haven't they been taken away by the Sun-Moon Temple yet? Mo Lien scoffed. Because they never found that pair of Sun-Moon wheels from beginning to end. I see. Jojo nodded in understanding. He thought to himself, that must be because this pair of heaven-defying weapons is no longer interested in those weaklings. The Sun-Moon Temple has always been stingy, sneaking into the secret territory and never opening it to outsiders. Do you think they will compromise this time? I will. Prince Mo nodded confidently. Just by looking at how nervous they were about the Saintess, it was obvious, wasn't it? The Saintess's cultivation wasn't that great, and from the looks of it, she was a little stupid. Why did the temple want to exchange her back at all costs? Arbor's eyes flashed. The carriage stopped in front of the Mu estate. Mo Lien jumped down and reached out to carry the little fellow who was bending down to get out of the carriage. She put her on the ground and held her little hand as they walked towards Yulon Court. Along the way, they were naturally secretly watched by others. But no one dared to say much. When they occasionally saw them, they all obediently bowed to the two. The two walked hand in hand as usual, but in the eyes of others, it was definitely the Crown Princess pulling the Crown Prince everywhere to show off to the Mu family. Just as they stepped into the court, Arbor heard a roar of unfilial daughters. Chapter 2672. He looked up and saw Mu Jingfeng rushing out of Yulon Court. His hair stood on end, and his eyes were filled with rage. However, when Mu Jingfeng met the Crown Prince's cold and still eyes, his expression could not help but turn awkward. Why did the Crown Prince return? Didn't he hear that he went to Qian Yuan Palace to discuss politics with His Majesty? Mu Jingfeng's furious breath abruptly stopped, and his cold and angry expression also froze on his face. He cupped his hands toward the Crown Prince. Your Highness. Prince Mo coldly exchanged glances. May I know the reason for family head Mu's sudden visit? Mu Jingfeng choked and awkwardly chuckled. Your Highness, this one came to find the crown princess to discuss some matters. Arbor pulled Prince Mo's hand and walked into the main hall. He directly sat down on a chair and did not even look at him. Such a contemptuous attitude angered Mu Jingfeng so much that his teeth ached, and his expression became increasingly unsightly. Family head Mu, speak if you have something to say, Prince Mo coldly said. Mu Jingfeng took a deep breath. He was muddled from anger earlier, so he rushed to Yulan Court to question Arbor in a moment of impulse. Now that he had calmed down, he was more rational. Crown Princess, did you tell your grandfather that you want to retrieve your mother's dowry? Arbor nodded. What's the problem? The old man's efficiency was pretty good. She had only mentioned this matter to him in the afternoon, and Mu Jingfeng had already rushed over to find her in the evening. That unfilial daughter earlier was clearly Mu Jingfeng's truest thought. Arbor coldly curled his lips. Mu Jingfeng was so angry at this unfilial daughter's attitude that the veins on his forehead were throbbing. How could she still ask him so calmly? What was the problem? Didn't she find it laughable to ask such a question? Mu Jingfeng took a deep breath and restrained his temper as he said to Arbor, Your mother's dowry, so many shops and estates, were all taken care of by Qingya all these years. If it weren't for Qingya's good management, it wouldn't have become such a prosperous shop today. Yes, I will pay her the management fee, Arbor said lightly. As for the price, she will definitely be satisfied. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that smoke started coming out of his head. Pay management fees? The counteroffer was satisfactory? What did this girl take Qingya for? A servant? Or a hired worker? He actually dared to say such a weird thing. Xiao Mu took out that rosewood box and opened it, taking out a stack of house deeds. She then remarked apathetically, Mu Jingfeng, you aren't thinking of swallowing your ex-wife's meager dowry and private property, right? If that's the case, then I'll have to find the capital governor and ask him clearly. Arbor said faintly, if I remember correctly, according to the laws of Shenzhou, dowry is a private property inherited by the daughter after the death of the wife. My mother's private property is naturally mine. Do you think it's appropriate for you to use my things to raise your beautiful wife, concubine, and concubine's children? Mu Jingfeng's face turned red from anger. This girl's words were too harsh and direct. If it were someone else, they would definitely not say it so bluntly and leave no leeway for others to mediate. This was a slap to the face. Who could endure it? Moreover, Mu Jingfeng had been the Mu family's head for many years. Deep down, he was already an extremely proud person. How could he endure being ridiculed by his daughter? He recalled how his daughter had pointed at his nose and angrily rebuked him, You're useless, at the entrance of Lixing men, and an inexplicable rage immediately rose in his chest. Chapter 2673. Shut up. Mu Jingfeng bellowed and pointed at Arbor. Why, you unfilial daughter? You're the debt collector your mother gave birth to. Arbor's eyes instantly revealed an ominous glint, and he jumped up from his chair. Try pointing at me and scolding me again? Mu Jingfeng was stunned, and he clenched his fists tightly. You were able to force my mother out of the Mu family back then, so you can naturally force me out today, Arbor coldly said, but I'm not a good-tempered woman like my mother. If you force me into a corner and anger me, I'll make sure your entire Mu family will never have a day of peace. Youth Mu Jingfeng was so angry that his vision turned black. This daughter was really born to collect debts. Arbor's face was cold as he angrily berated, Mu Jingfeng, listen well today. Sort out the accounts of all the businesses and the profits over the years within 3 days. Once the time is up, immediately hand them over to me for a look. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. I'm reminding you again. My mother's gentle and good-tempered days are over. She coldly looked at him and sternly said, I'll have the final say in everything from now on. Jingfeng, Mu Qingya, Mu Xingchen, and Mu Roxuan rushed in together. She hurriedly stopped the red-eyed Mu Jingfeng and gently said, Jingfeng, let's talk things out. Jingfeng, don't be like this. What can't father and daughter talk about openly? Scram. Arbor's hair stood on end. His body was covered in sharp thorns, and whoever he poked would be unlucky. Stop acting like a virtuous wife and filial son in front of me. I'm warning you one last time. Hand over the things obediently, and we can still continue to be friends. Otherwise, we'll fight to the death and be irreconcilable. Even if I have to burn and smash these things, I won't let you off a single bit. Mu Xingqian's heart tightened, and he hurriedly looked up. Jojo, that's all I have to say today. I'll send someone to hand over all the accounts later. Arbor stared coldly at the trembling Mu Jingfeng and curled his lips mockingly. Mu Jingfeng, I didn't expect you to be so disgusting. After driving his wife out of the Mu family, he can still take his wife's dowry all these years and raise such a large group of beautiful women with a clear conscience. Haha. Although Arbor was smiling, the disdain in his eyes was as clear as day, and not a ripple could be seen on his stoic face. In this world, if you claim to be number 2 in shamelessness, no one would dare to claim to be number 1. Jojo. Mu Xingqian was in disbelief. He didn't expect his younger sister to insult her biological father like that. Mu Jingfeng was also so angry that he was completely speechless. Vicious, this daughter of his was simply vicious to the extreme. If it weren't for Mu Qingya's diligent management, would the shop and manor have been so prosperous and profitable year after year? When he thought of that woman who was as indifferent as the wind and as cold as snow, Mu Jingfeng felt irritated. He actually still couldn't forget that pair of eyes even now. Jojo, what did you mean by what you said earlier? What did he mean by driving his wife out of the Mu family? Mu Xingqian was puzzled. Didn't mother leave the Mu family by herself? Wasn't she abandoning her husband and children? Greetings to Master and Madam. A deep voice slowly rang out. In his fury, Mu Jingfeng turned to look at her. Chen Kuei, so it's you, this unruly old servant, spouting nonsense in front of the crown princess. No wonder his daughter had the deed to the house in her hands. He should have known that it was this old witch's doing. Chapter 2674. Chen Kuei bowed in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Master, Chen Kuei is only speaking the truth. You told me that mother left the Mu family on her own accord. Mu Xingqian turned to look at Mu Jingfeng with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. What did Jojo mean by his words earlier? Eldest young master, Madam was forced to leave the Mu family on her own accord? It's been so many years, yet family head Mu has deceived his own son like this. Chen Kuei smiled sarcastically. No wonder you wouldn't let this old servant see eldest young master again back then. This old servant wanted to see young master several times, but every time, I was either told that young master was in closed-door cultivation or had gone out to cultivate, telling me not to disturb him. There was once when this old servant barged into young master's court at night, but before I reached the inner court, I was injured and had to escape. Then, this old servant understood after returning that this old servant couldn't see eldest young master anymore. If it weren't for family head Mu wanting to retain some face to avoid rumors of him being intolerant and unwilling to even let off his ex-wife's housekeeper, I'm afraid this old servant would have been killed by you long ago. Chen Kuei, if you're hiding in that dead person's house, then just do as you please. You even came out to sow discord. Do you really think this family head doesn't dare to kill you? Mu Jingfeng glared coldly as he reprimanded angrily. He should have killed this unruly old servant a few years ago. He should have killed this old fart when he couldn't get the deed to the house back then. If it weren't for her crafty and slippery words that she had long left a backup plan outside to kill her and sully the entire Mu family's reputation, how could he have been so timid as to let her live until now? Reputation was very important to him. He was the Mu family's family head in the eyes of the world, the pillar of the entire Mu family. He could not fall. Family head Mu, if you want to show off, then return to your own court. You can forget about it at my place. The girl bluntly ordered him to leave. Prepare everything. When the 3 days are up, I'll personally bring people to receive it. Don't be so shameless. When the time comes, I'll make you suffer the consequences. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that his head was about to explode. With a fling of his sleeves, he walked out of the courtyard. Good. He really had a good daughter. Mu Qingya looked at Jojo with a complicated expression, sighed, and hurried out. Mu Xingchen, on the other hand, seemed to have lost his soul. Arbor, on the other hand, did not want to pay any attention to him. Take care of his feelings? Stop joking around. He was already an adult, but he didn't have any sense of judgment at all. He was simply a pig's head. Xiao Mu did not know that right now, she was being mischievous because she expected better from him. How could the crown prince not understand? He stepped forward and held her hand to comfort her. Can you find a group of people who can do accounting? The crown prince nodded and patted her head. Don't worry, leave this to me. Arbor nodded. She decided to settle the score with Mu Jingfeng. Before the two of them could continue speaking, they saw Hui Feng enter with a grin and report, Master, the people from the temple have agreed to the conditions and delivered the contract for Chess Mountain Spirit Stone Mine, as well as 2 blank jade tablets for entering and exiting the Mystic Realm. The crown prince nodded, unsurprised. He turned to look at Sir Jojo. Arbor nodded and said, Let them go. Alrighty. Hui Feng ran off excitedly. Sir Jojo and the crown prince exchanged a look. Was it normal for subordinates to be abnormally excited every time they received compensation? The temple's custodian Wen Quan finally received the released holy nun and her entourage. The holy nun was no longer enveloped by her usual holy halo. Instead, she looked like a beggar when Quan glared fiercely at her. Follow me. Chapter 2675. Nie Yaoguang's body trembled slightly. She lowered her head and hurriedly followed the footsteps of the custodian. Her hands under her sleeves involuntarily clenched tightly. The 2 spirit stallions were very fast. In a flash, they arrived in front of an ordinary farmer's courtyard in the suburbs. Nie Yaoguang followed the custodian Wen Quan and carefully walked into the courtyard. A tall figure slowly turned around. His face was covered with a devil mask, and his gaze was cold as he looked at her. Nie Yaoguang's body suddenly stiffened. She hurriedly knelt on the ground. Hall masters. Who told you to act on your own? A heavy palm wind swept over, landing heavily on Nie Yaoguang's face. Nie Yaoguang screamed, her body falling towards the flower bed in the courtyard. Custodian Wen Quan's old face was very serious. His head was slightly lowered. His hands were solemn as he stood at the side. His expression was very respectful. Nie Yaoguang reacted, hurriedly crawling forward. Her hair was disheveled as she awkwardly crawled to the devil-masked man's feet, repeatedly kowtowing and begging for mercy. Hallmaster, Hallmaster, I know I was wrong. Hallmaster, Hallmaster, I know I was wrong. Yaoguang will not dare to act on her own in the future. The devil-masked Hallmaster, whose leg was being hugged by Nie Yaoguang, coldly looked down at the woman, suddenly kicking her out. If not for the fact that you still have some use, do you think that master would use so many resources to exchange for you? Yaoguang knows, Yaoguang knows. Nie Yaoguang begged on the ground, tears streaming down her face. She regretted her past actions. After this incident, I hope you can grow a brain in the future. The devil-masked man coldly stared at Nie Yaoguang, suddenly saying lightly, Stretch out your hand. Nie Yaoguang hurriedly rolled up her sleeves, revealing a section of charred skin. The devil-masked man stared at her arm and frowned, but still stretched out his finger to feel her pulse. In less than a minute, he retracted his hand. The devil-masked man casually threw her a pill. After eating, the lightning injury on your body will recover about 60%. Thank you, Hallmaster. Nie Yaoguang stretched out her trembling hand, took the pill from the devil-masked man, and hurriedly swallowed it. The injury on her body was indeed gradually recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The devil-masked man glanced at her indifferently. You may leave. Yes. This subordinate will take his leave. After Nie Yaoguang got up, he hurriedly tidied up his messy hair, bowed, and left in a hurry. Wen Quan took a step forward and whispered to the devil-masked man, Hall Master Gong. Her body isn't affected, right? The devil-masked man smiled coldly. Fortunately, her roots are not damaged. In the future, watch her carefully and don't let her do stupid things again. Wen Quan said in a deep voice, this subordinate has failed in his duty. The devil-masked man waved his hand and said, Master still values this experimental subject very much. Stay in the capital and be careful. Don't act rashly for now. The man in the devil mask said coldly. Also, warn Ye Yaoguang to behave and not provoke some people that she can't deal with. Yes, this subordinate understands. This subordinate will definitely keep a close eye on the saintess. Wen Quan muttered with a taut face. When he raised his head again, Hall Master Gong was already nowhere to be seen. A small pitch-black bottle wrapped in a gust of wind fell into Wen Quan's hand. A faint cold voice came from the air. Continue to give this medicine to Nye Yaoguang. Chapter 2676. There was another heavy snowfall last night, and the entire Tsang province was blanketed in a blanket of white. This was probably the last snowfall in Tsang province. When Rong pushed open the door and entered, he immediately saw Prince Chen standing by the window like a stone sculpture, his melancholy and silent gaze resting on an unknown place. The morning wind blew against his loose white robe, causing it to sway slightly. His long, flowing black hair seemed to be rippling with mist as it fell behind his waist. Flap, flap, flap. A thin piece of paper on the ground beside the window was blown up and down by the wind. Rong's gaze landed on the paper, and he slowly walked up and bent down to pick it up. There were only a few words on the paper, but the pen was vigorous and sharp, penetrating the back of the paper like a swimming dragon. Who says lovesickness is bitter? Lovesickness is heartbreaking. Rong put away the paper and coughed lightly. Duan Yu abruptly returned to his senses, and he suddenly chuckled when he saw his stoic face from the corner of his eyes. You walk like a ghost, not making a sound at all. It's because you are too focused on a certain matter, Rong said dryly. Duan Yu chuckled and walked to the small table by the window to sit down. He pointed at the seat across from him. Are you interested in having a drink with me? Rong Qing strode forward and pulled out a stool to sit down. You didn't sleep the entire night? Duan Yu's hand paused. How is that possible? Rong Qing rolled her eyes at him. This stubborn fellow still refused to admit it. He stood by the window the entire night, and it was even more dewy, so his hair was wet. Rong Qing raised her hand and poured him a cup of hot tea. I found it. What did you say? The Crown Prince of the Divine Province and the Crown Prince of the Underworld Province both received invitations. Cough. Rong coughed lightly and said, the Crown Princess of the Divine Province did not receive one. Duan Yu looked up at him strangely. Is the Royal Academy's principal a fool? Rong Qing shook her head with a straight face. No, I'm not. The principal has the highest cultivation in this generation of the Yun family. Venerable Immortal Yun Piaomiao. In other words, he couldn't be a fool with such a high cultivation. Duan Yu looked at him speechlessly. I'm not going. If Jojo wasn't going, why would he go? Boring. Rong Qing hurriedly said, Your Highness, please think twice before you act. I heard that Crown Prince Rong Li did everything he could to get a spot and even formed a team. How could a weakling like him fight his way to first place on the Heavenly Yuan roll? Duan Yu asked incredulously. Even though I can't, cough, if I can obtain first place on the Earth Yuan ranking, I will be able to obtain a considerable amount of resources. The Crown Prince also doesn't want to lose to you. Duan Yu raised his brows. The Earth Prime role? If the Tianyuan ranking is ranked first for an individual, then the Tianyuan ranking is ranked first for a team. Duan Yu nodded in understanding. Rong Li formed a team? Yes. Rong Qing nodded. The Crown Prince has already contacted a few of the older students in the royal school. As long as he goes in, he can form a team. Duan Yu pursed his lips disinterestedly. Then let him go. I don't want to go to a boring place like the academy. Rong couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. His Majesty had given him a death order. He had to escort His Highness to the academy and fight for first place. The annual Tianyuan ranking in the 3 provinces was the focus of competition. However, he didn't expect the willful Prince Qin to reject the academy's invitation. Chapter 2677. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have told him that the little crown princess didn't receive an invitation. He was still to blame for being too straightforward. Rong massaged his throbbing head and advised kindly, Your Highness, there are many benefits to going to the Royal Academy. Other people can't even beg for it. Seeing that Duan Yu didn't reply, Rong Qing hastily added, "Anyway, the entrance exam is on March 15th, so there are still 7 to 8 days for you to consider." "Is there still a need to consider?" Rong Qing quickly said, "Perhaps the Crown Prince of the Divine Province has a way to bring the Crown Princess along?" Duan Yu was startled, but his spirits perked up. "What you said makes some sense. If Mo Lien, that guy, insisted on going to the Royal Academy to compete for first place on the Tianyuan roll, then he would definitely bring Jojo along even if he had to create a fake invitation." It had to be said that Duan Yu truly understood Prince Mo too well. Rong secretly sighed in relief when he saw that Duan Yu changed his mind. "We should make preparations early." If there was anything to prepare, he just needed to inform his mother in advance. Duan Yu pursed his lips and thought to himself. Seeing that he didn't answer again, Rong Qing helplessly picked up her teacup and drank a mouthful of tea. With this shout, his eyes immediately lit up a little. "What? This tea? This is?" Such rich spiritual energy was like a warm current sliding down the stomach when it entered her mouth. This was too comforting. Duan Yu's gloomy mood was instantly swept away, and he smugly winked at Rong Qing. "How is it? It's delicious, right? The spiritual tea that Jojo gave me can't be sold outside." Rong nodded. "After the spiritual tea entered my body, my meridians reacted, and the circulation of spiritual energy in my body also sped up." Duan Yu was even more pleased with himself when he heard this. He thought, that foolish old man from the Royal Academy, not accepting our Jojo into the Academy is simply his loss for 8 lifetimes. "Your Highness." Xiao Kezi's report came from outside the door. "Noble Lady Qing's manservant delivered a level 7 spiritual horse to our noble consort Duan. Her Highness the noble consort said she didn't need it, so she delivered it to Your Highness. They said they caught it in the Crimson Shadow Forest. Your Highness, do you want to come out and take a look? It looks so mighty and beautiful." Duan Yu raised a brow. Noble Lady Qing presented Buddha with borrowed flowers. She said that she was going to give his mother a spirit horse, but in reality, she was borrowing his mother's hand to give it to him. Spirit horses were not as common as spirit stallions. Spirit stallions had spiritual awareness. Whether it was their reaction speed or their ability to travel thousands of miles in a day, they could not be compared to spirit stallions. "Let's recuperate for 2 days first. I'll go take a look when I'm free." "Yes, Your Highness." Xiao Kezi retreated. Rong Qing could not help but raise her eyebrows. This new noble Lady Qing is a smart person. Duan Yu curled his lips. He couldn't help but find it funny when he recalled Empress Lu's hard-pressed appearance these days. Rong Qing's eyes drooped slightly as she downed the spirit tea in one gulp. "Your Highness, would you like to reward your humble servant with a few taels of spirit tea leaves?" "Get lost." Rong Qing rubbed her nose and walked out of the Taiji Palace with a sad expression. The small boat of friendship capsized just like that. After Rong Qing left the bedchamber, Duan Yu poured himself another cup of steaming spirit tea and took a sip. Empress Lu's unlucky life began from the moment they left the heaven of ice and snow region and returned to Flat Mountain Town. First, Princess Jiankong was poisoned with a neurotoxin after being flogged 10 times. Then, Empress Lu was forced to bring the eyesore, medicine Lady Qing Qing, into her palace to specifically treat her daughter Jiankong. Chapter 2678. In the end, one day, the emperor coincidentally came to the central palace and bumped into the medicine woman Qingqing, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. The cinnabar fire in his heart burned fiercely again. Just like that, the two of them fell in love with each other again. The most outrageous thing was that they actually found a moonless and windy night to do that in a small, remote palace. When the imperial edict conferring nobility arrived at the central palace, Empress Lu was so angry that she almost fainted. Following that, she discovered that the meridians in her daughter's left leg were permanently necrotic despite a round of treatment. When Princess Jiankong walked, she had to raise her left shoe high, so her walking posture was very stiff. Even though it was raised, walking was still a bit bumpy. When she walked fast, it was even more obvious that she was limping. Empress Lu gnashed her teeth in hatred. When she connected all the dots, she couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Old Fourth, that black-hearted fellow, had been scheming against her since Ping Shan Town. Step by step, he helped that vixen up. He clearly wanted to get a favored woman to compete with her, the Empress. Old Fourth was such a terrifying person. How could his honestly deal with him? If he was pulled down by someone like Old Fourth, then wouldn't she and her son be left without a corpse? Empress Lu did her best to find all kinds of backup plans to pressure Crown Prince Rong Li and finally got an invitation. She didn't need to worry too much about the test. In any case, taking the backup plan once was the same as taking the backup plan a few times. Li would make a name for himself in the Imperial Academy, and the Academy would only serve as icing on the cake for Li's qualifications. As long as he obtained first place on the Earth Primordial Roll, he would be able to pull in a lot of resources for their Tsong province. At that time, the Emperor and all the officials would definitely see Li's ability. For this matter, they had to give it their all. Achoo! Arbor rubbed his small nose and sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate for a while. He opened his eyes when he felt that there wasn't much spiritual energy entering his body. Although the spiritual energy in the Great Divine Province was abundant, it still had to be considered. For a place like the Imperial Capital that was filled with so many clans and sects, the spiritual energy would have long been thinned out no matter how abundant it was. She had to find a place with abundant spiritual energy in the Divine Province to establish a base for the Holy Water Sect. This way, her senior sisters wouldn't have to stay on her fish orchid planet all day. The little fellow was definitely overthinking things. Wasn't her fish orchid star much better than any other spirit realm? However, she felt that imprisoning her senior sisters on the fish orchid planet was too much for them. However, the matter of finding spirit realms still depended on luck. It was not something that could be rushed. When the Holy Water Sect opened its doors in the future, they would be settling down in the Divine Province for a long time. Arbor naturally had to find the best place with abundant spiritual energy for the sect. That was a lifetime benefit for the disciples, so they couldn't be careless about it. When Prince Mo stepped through the door, he saw that the little fellow seemed to have thought of something and rolled around on the bed. When Arbor saw the Crown Prince, his hands and feet froze in midair. Mo Lien giggled. In a flash, she appeared beside the bed and reached out to hug the little person on the bed. Jojo, today's weather is especially good. We were so disturbed yesterday that we couldn't make a trip out. Today, we'll go to Half Moon Cliff and take you to the hot spring villa to play. Arbor's eyes brightened. He blinked when the man pulled him into his arms and said gloomily, I haven't washed up yet. Chapter 2679. Mo Lien lowered his head and kissed her fair and tender little face. It's all right, hubby doesn't mind. Pei, Jojo dislikes you. Sir Jojo glanced at him and harumphed. Mo Lien let go of her in amusement, allowing her to jump off the bed and hurriedly wash up. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the two happily held hands and prepared to leave. Then Mu Xingchen, this super big candle, suddenly appeared in front of them. What are you doing here? His Highness the Crown Prince stared at his brother-in-law in displeasure. Can't you be a little discerning? Can you not disturb the couple's two-person world? I'll go with you. Mu Xingchen made the final decision, not giving Prince Mo any leeway to refuse. The Crown Prince was simply stunned. He had a very bad premonition. This brother-in-law jumped out. Could it be that he wanted to compete with this Crown Prince for favor? From the looks of it, something wasn't right. Prince Mo's handsome face was taut as he said indifferently, the carriage isn't big, it can't fit all of us. If you know what's good for you, then don't follow us. It's all right, I'll just follow your carriage. Prince Mo. Arbor was expressionless. She didn't look at the two men's childlike undercurrent and directly walked out of the door with small steps. With a stoic face, she shouted, Hurry up! Kai Xiu lowered her head and inexplicably twitched the corner of her mouth. She hurriedly skipped out with the little crown princess. Kai Chi was even more overjoyed. It wasn't easy for them to have a chance to go out, and the little crown princess was willing to bring them along. She was simply overjoyed. The two of them had truly received quite a bit of compensation from Madame Mu yesterday. Their admiration for the young crown prince consort was truly like a torrential river that would never cease. The two of them got on the carriage and opened the curtain to take a look. Sure enough, they saw Mu Xingchen riding a spirit stallion and following behind. Kai Xiu, Kai Chi, and the rest of the entourage were also following behind in a carriage. The two carriages, along with a few spirit stallions, left the Mu residence's main gate and headed towards Changle Street. Mo Lian seemed to have sensed something. She stretched out a finger to pull open a corner of the curtain. Her eyes coldly glanced at the corner of the street, and then she lowered the curtain. Suddenly, a hunchbacked man walked out from the corner. His whole body was cold, and his head was covered in cold sweat. Just now, the gaze that he shot over was really abnormally sharp. He had a feeling that he had been seen through in an instant. That person took a deep breath and turned to look at Xiao Yingchun, whose eyes were wide open and filled with hatred. Without the slightest hesitation, a slap landed on her cheek. "Bitch, are you trying to cause trouble for our jade tripod market? You're just a lowly slave. What kind of relationship do you have with a big family like the Mu family?" It's true. Xiao Yingchun was shocked. She knew that this hunchbacked elder was already suspicious. But she couldn't bear to see Arbor living a comfortable life. She was already so miserable, so how could this main culprit be able to live a carefree life? Even if she had to use her last breath, she would drag her down from above. It would be best if she ended up in the same state as her, falling into a pile of mud. But was that possible? Xiao Yingchun now felt especially helpless and panicked. With her status, she couldn't even get close to Arbor. "Come back with me." The old man wasn't a fool. He saw many things in Xiao Yingchun's eyes, and his suspicions about her deepened. This woman probably wanted to drag their jade tripod market down with her because she couldn't take revenge on others. Chapter 2680. Xiao Yingchun instantly became anxious. She struggled and shouted, "Old man Li, I think you're scared." Old man Li's eyes flashed, and he sneered, "You don't need to provoke me. Yin Yang is someone who does big business. We won't get involved in this kind of unnecessary trouble." After saying that, he grabbed Xiao Yingchun's clothes by her chest and lifted her up like a chick. He then turned around and ran towards Amusement Alley. She absolutely couldn't get involved in this matter. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. Not a single word this bitch said was true. How could she make decisions for her own sister? Don't be ridiculous. The carriage came from the Mu residence. What did the young miss of a large aristocratic family have to do with her? How could she make decisions? Xiao Yingchun struggled and shouted, "Old man Li, you have to believe me about this matter today. That girl in the carriage just now is indeed my sister." A slap blocked Xiao Yingchun's mouth. Old man Li carried her back to Amusement Alley with a vicious expression and threw her in front of Sun Yang's middle-aged Yin Yang. After the matter was explained, Yin Yang was silent for a long time. Then she said to Old man Li, "Throw her into the pink house. I don't want to see this woman again in the future." The old man cupped his hands and picked up Xiao Yingchun, who was struggling on the verge of death. Xiao Yingchun screamed with a face full of panic, No. Yin Yang, older sister Yin Yang, I really didn't lie to you." Yin Yang picked up a cup of tea and coldly glanced at Xiao Yingchun. Treating people like fools? She originally thought that the girl Xiao Yingchun wanted to sell was like her, a country bumpkin with no background. Who knew that person actually came from the Mu residence? A girl who could come from the Mu residence, even if she was a little servant girl, wasn't someone they could casually touch. They had to avoid attracting a fishy smell for no reason. Yin Yang subconsciously touched the mole at the corner of her mouth. She glanced indifferently at Xiao Yingchun, who was still shrieking after being dragged out, and snorted. "Little girl, you still want to trick this old lady into your trap? You must be dreaming." Old Li grabbed Xiao Yingchun's hair and threw her into a carriage. He said to the burly man driving the carriage, "Send this woman to the pink house. Biddy Huang will know what to do." "All right." "No, I'm not going. I'm not going to that whatever pink brothel." Xiao Yingchun screamed shrilly as she pounded on the carriage, wanting to climb out. The coachman lashed out with his whip and pulled the woman into the carriage. With a shout, The coachman drove the carriage away from the amusement alley and headed for the flowery willow street next door. Arbor had no idea that Xiao Yingchun had only appeared for a moment before disappearing again. At this moment, she was sitting in the carriage, hugging a jar of dried fruits as she complained to the crown prince, "We took a big detour to the heavenly ice region, and now we're at the capital. I didn't expect that Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others would arrive the day after tomorrow. They're really slow on foot." Prince Mo said in amusement, "They're not as fast as 7th yen on foot." "Umph." The little girl snorted non-committally. When she thought of 7th Yan's unadorable face, she felt a bit indignant. "Where are Wang Yan and the others staying?" "We'll let them stay in an inn for the time being. We plan to wait for Zhou Huan and the others to arrive, then have someone prepare a residence and arrange for them to stay together." Sir Jojo flipped through a rosewood box in his hand, took out a deed and patted it. "Isn't this a ready-made one? What's there to buy? Let's go, it's on the way. Let's go to Hua Chi Street in the south of the city to take a look." Chapter 2681. The Crown Prince's mouth twitched. Why was this little girl's temperament so silly and funny, wife? Your suggestion isn't bad either. Prince Mo leaned close to his little wife and said with a smile, "It just so happens that your big brother is also here. If there's any trouble, big brother will block it for us." Arbor's eyes darted around. Will he block it? Of course he will. If it weren't for the fact that this brother-in-law was so miserable, he wouldn't put in a good word for him. Fortunately, although this brother-in-law's brain wasn't very bright, his feelings for Jojo could be considered sincere. Prince Mo was naturally delighted that there was another person who doted on his little Jojo. Moreover, the little fellow's feelings toward this big brother were very complicated, but it was mostly anger rather than dislike. She was also a little thing who couldn't swallow her pride, so she definitely wouldn't explain anything to Mu Xingxin. She usually wore a cold face, so if one didn't know her well, they really would be scared off by her stoic little face. Her brother-in-law wasn't like him and Duan Yu, who pestered her back then and didn't fear her stoic cold face. But who pestered her? And freaking why did he have to think of Duan Yu? Hurry and Scram. Mo Lien gathered her thoughts and asked worriedly after some thought, "Jojo, if you reconcile with Big Brother in the future, am I more important or is Big Brother more important?" "You're more important." Sir Jojo gave an affirmative answer without hesitation. Prince Mo was instantly overjoyed. "All right, since this crown prince is still number one, forget it. I'll help you if I can, brother-in-law." If Sir Jojo had hesitated for a second earlier, his brother-in-law's situation would have become even more dangerous. With Prince Mo's black-bellied temperament, he definitely wouldn't smooth things over for the siblings. It was already good enough that he didn't stab his brother-in-law in the back. Mo Lien informed the carriage driver driving the carriage outside, and the carriage circled around from the side. Because Hua Chi Street in the south of the city was also a well-known street with many shops, the coachman was very familiar with the road. Taking a shortcut, he found the house in less than half an incense stick's time. Arbor looked at it and was quite satisfied. The area of the house was quite large. There were 3 rooms in the east and west, and 2 large courtyards in the north and south. There was still an empty space at the back that could be expanded. It was also possible to build a few more rows of rooms in the future. When Arbor jumped down from the carriage, Mu Xingxin also dismounted. He hurriedly followed him and asked, "Jojo, where is this place?" Arbor patted the deed in his hand. Mu Xingxin only felt that this little sister was extremely adorable. He hurriedly nodded and asked, "Do you need Big Brother's help?" Arbor glanced at him and snorted. "Knock on the door." Mo Lien was a little amused. She watched as her brother-in-law ran up the stairs and banged on the door with all his might under Jojo's command. The door quickly opened. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes came to open the door. She sized up Mu Xingxin with a sharp gaze. "Young master, who are you looking for?" "Who are you?" Arbor pulled Mu Xingxin to the side and shouted at the woman. That woman was clearly angered by Sir Jojo's words. "Miss, you're knocking on my door, and you're actually questioning who the owner is? Don't you think it's funny?" Arbor raised the deed in his hand and waved it. "My house, understand?" That woman's eyes almost popped out, but she didn't have time to scold him. "Hui Feng." The little crown princess shouted again. His little great-aunt was a little funny, but he definitely couldn't laugh. Enter. The little fellow waved her hand like a bandit entering the mountains. Chapter 2682. Hui Feng had a smug look on his face as he led his subordinates, who were at a loss for words, up to the roof and into the estate. A dozen or so great spiritual masters dealing with a few servants was truly a piece of cake. In just a short moment, all the servants in the estate had been tied up and brought to the main hall. A 17 or 18-year-old woman with her hair coiled into a woman's bun and a newborn baby in her arms exclaimed in surprise, Who are you people? The woman who had opened the door earlier was thrown to the ground by Hui Feng. She struggled to get up and yelled, Miss, you bunch of bandits and robbers. How dare you be so impudent in broad daylight? I'm going to report you to the authorities for trespassing. Auntie, take a good look at who's forcibly occupying a private residence, who's forcibly occupying someone else's house. Arbor gestured at the title deed in his hand and snorted before turning to look at Mu Xingchen. Do you see? This is one of my mother's dowry. But now, it's being seized by a complete stranger, and they're even calling me a bandit and a robber. This is the dowry that your so-called good father and stepmother gave to my mother. Look at how meticulously they took care of it. Mu Xingchen was also very angry, but he gritted his teeth and said, Younger sister, don't worry. Mother's dowry is all yours. No one can snatch it away. The little fellow snorted, her little face tensed up in anger. Mo Lien walked up and took her little hand to pinch her fuming little face. Do you want me to call the capital governor over? Arbor shook his head. He could take care of these trivial matters himself. Why bother others? Mu Xingchen had harbored misgivings about his father since the incident in Magnolia Court, so a trace of disappointment hung on his face. His cold, electric eyes stared at the 17 or 18-year-old woman before his gaze landed on the child in her arms. His thoughts turned, and he already somewhat understood the situation. However, he still took a step forward and berated, Who exactly are you people? Why are you living in someone else's estate without permission? The old woman was furious. She angrily shouted at Mu Xingchen, Who the hell are you? You came to someone else's house and scolded us loudly and even injured us. When our master comes back, he will definitely skin you alive. Mu Xingchen's eyes seemed to be able to quench poison as he stared at the old woman and asked, Who is your master? I'll scare you to death if I tell you. My master is the current head of the Mu family. Darling Qiao was dumbfounded. She didn't have a keen sense of touch when it came to such matters. Mu Xingchen could instantly sense it, but Darling Qiao didn't even think about it. What did that mean? She speechlessly looked up at her husband. Is this Mu Jingfeng's mistress? Crown Prince Mo nodded at her affirmatively. Arbor was still in a daze. On the other side, Mu Xingchen had already exploded in anger. He kicked the old woman a few meters away and roared, Shut up! This shameless thing. How could she be the daughter of a good family if she could be an outsider's mistress without any status? He even dared to boast about it so eloquently. The Mu family's face had been completely disgraced. Which well-educated man in an aristocratic family would have an outside mistress? That was something that only people who couldn't be brought to the table would do. Mu Xingchen felt like he was about to explode from anger. He didn't expect that his usually sanctimonious father would do such a thing. Using his ex-wife's house to have an outside mistress? No wonder Jojo called him the most disgusting person. Chapter 2683. Guards, Mu Xingchen growled decisively. 2 Mu family shadow guards immediately floated in and stood in front of Mu Xingchen, not daring to even breathe loudly. Tie them up and send them to Madame. The 2 shadow guards didn't dare to say another word. They went up and picked up the old woman and the young woman carrying the child, then left quickly with a whoosh. Jojo, Big Brother will get someone to renovate this house for you. It will take about 5 to 6 days. You can see what you want to do with it then. Qiao Mu nodded her small head, accepting Mu Xingchen's goodwill. Do you feel uncomfortable? She could feel the low pressure around him. Her father had been lying to her for so many years, and the things he had done were exposed by his children. It was really embarrassing. Mu Xingchen felt a little bitter, but he still forced a smile. Big brother is fine. Jojo, big brother has been muddle-headed all these years. I didn't know you had it so hard in the lower star domain. It's not that hard for me. Arbor thought that she had never wronged herself in this life. She should make this clear to the man in front of her, lest he feel even worse. Mu Xingchen was stunned, and he couldn't help but find it funny. He wanted to reach out and pat his sister's head, but he didn't dare to do so without her permission. He looked at her carefully and said, Jojo, big brother can't make up for what happened in the past. But let big brother take good care of you in the future, okay? Mo Lien hurriedly pulled his little wife to his side and looked at Mu Xingchen warily. As expected, his intuition was very reliable. This brother-in-law was here to fight with him. Arbor looked at Mu Xingchen and didn't say anything for a long time. Do you know about the Long family in the Sea of Forgetfulness? Mu Xingchen was stunned, then nodded. No matter how stupid he was, he knew about his maternal family. More than 10 years ago, the capital's Long family joined forces with the Gu family and others to rob their family of resources. Do you know about this? Mu Xingchen quickly shook his head. Be smarter in the future. Arbor couldn't help but yell at him, don't be silly all the time. You believe everything people say. Back then, my mother gathered a group of people to fight against the imperial capital's Long clan. Mu Jingfeng, that good-for-nothing, was worried that mother would implicate the Mu family, so he and a group of tortoise bastard elders forced her to scram. He won't tell you about this at all. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists tightly. That was not what his father had told him. He must have told you that mother abandoned her husband and children and left the Mu family for some trivial matters. Arbor sneered. Have you never doubted it? Mu Xingchen was speechless. At that time he was still very young. When he heard his father say this, a thorn was buried in his heart. When he grew up, this thorn finally took root and sprouted, growing stronger and stronger. Now that he thought about it, he had believed that his mother had abandoned him without any evidence. He was so stupid that it was laughable. Jojo was right. Jojo, big brother knows his mistake. Are you willing to give big brother a chance to take care of you? Mu Xingchen asked softly as he looked at Arbor with bright eyes. It's fine as long as I take care of Jojo. Mo Lien hurriedly followed up. Big brother, you do what you need to do. If you're free, just come and watch Jojo. Chapter 2684. Mu Xingchen turned to look at Mo Lien. Suddenly, he felt a little annoyed and inexplicably wanted to stare daggers at His Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince looked at his brother-in-law with an innocent face. Jojo, big brother is glaring at me. Mu Xingchen's daggers became sharper. Arbor looked at the two speechlessly. Hubby was so pitiful. He was always disliked by others. It must be because he was handsome. Arbor ignored the two and jumped into the carriage. He said to the coachman, Uncle, let's go to Half Moon Cliff. Mo Lien did not get into the carriage. She smiled at Sir Jojo and said, Wife, I want to say a few words to big brother. Xiao Mu made an oh sound and glanced at the two men curiously. Then, she nonchalantly tossed aside the curtain and rolled into the carriage to continue eating her snacks. Mo Lien took out a spirit stallion and rode with Mu Xingchen for a while. The two exchanged daggers with each other for a while. Mu Xingchen was somewhat defeated. He stared at his brother-in-law and asked, What do you want to say to me? Jojo is a meticulous and sensitive person. You can't do this. You have to be thick-skinned. Pester her. You have to show her how good you are to her. Let her feel that you treat her sincerely. Do you understand? Mo Lien looked at his brother-in-law strangely. Why was his brother-in-law's face getting darker? Brother-in-law, you have to work hard. Whether it's a friend or a relative, my wife isn't that easy to accept. Mu Xingchen's face was dark. He stared at Mo Lien and asked, Is this how you tricked her? Pester her. Thick skin. Like the spring rain moisturizing things, it was subtle and silent, but it penetrated her life inch by inch. Right? Looking at your shameless face, I know you hit the nail on the head. This was completely based on experience. Mo Lien blinked and put on a serious face. Brother-in-law, what are you talking about? Seeing that he was so pitiful, he wanted to teach him a few tricks to take down the little fellow. I didn't expect to be insulted by my brother-in-law. Stop pretending. Mu Xingchen gritted his teeth. Although you are the crown prince of the divine province, I will not let you off if you treat my sister badly. Mo Lien's expression immediately became serious. Brother-in-law, don't worry. My feelings for my wife can be seen by the sun and the moon. Mu Xingchen rolled his eyes, but he couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. Did she really not suffer on Sikong planet? She didn't know before she was 7, Prince Mo complained with a distressed expression. She wasn't willing to tell me even when I asked her. However, after meeting me when I was 7 years old, don't worry, brother-in-law, I really didn't suffer much. You knew Jojo when she was 7 years old? Mu Xingchen couldn't help but exclaim. That's right. Mo Lien continued to provoke his brother-in-law. Wasn't it very early? Brother-in-law, you don't know, but my wife was so adorable when she was young. She was made of jade and snow, just like a little pink doll. TSK, you didn't see it. Thinking about it now, it's still memorable. Mo Lien sounded more and more smug as he spoke, and Hui Feng almost couldn't bear to continue listening. Your Highness, can you stop bragging? Back then, you weren't even liked by the crown princess. You make it sound like you're very familiar with her, but you're not at all. What does she look like? Is she still stoic? Stoic, she's been stoic for more than a decade. Chapter 2685. What did you say? Mu Xingchen reprimanded in a low voice. You're not allowed to say that my younger sister is expressionless. So what if she's expressionless? Expressionless looks good too. Mo Lien, brother-in-law, weren't you the one who brought up the words expressionless face first? Huifeng's mouth twitched as he looked at Prince Mo and young Master Mu. Why were these two still chatting awkwardly? They were in two completely different worlds. I'll definitely treat younger sister well in the future. Mo Lien's eyes were tinged with a hint of a smile. She whipped the horse, and the horse galloped forward. Brother-in-law, just do as I teach you. I guarantee that my wife will change her opinion of you within a month. Mu Xingchen quickly waved his whip and chased after her. You don't need to tell me. I'll naturally use my own method to treat younger sister well. He would definitely work hard to make younger sister believe that this big brother of hers was sincere and absolutely sincere to her, without any personal benefits mixed in. Arbor didn't deliberately listen to their conversation, but their last two sentences were spoken rather loudly, so it was hard for her not to hear them. She lifted a corner of the curtain and saw Sir Jojo sitting there with a jar of snacks in his hands. However, in the depths of her eyes, she saw two tall figures, one in green and one in black, urging their horses forward, one in front and one in back. Men were truly strange creatures. Sir Jojo calmly stuffed a piece of dried fruit into his mouth. Just now, these two people didn't even have eyebrows and eyes, but now, they were like brothers as they galloped forward, one in front and one in back. Sigh, they truly had childish temperaments. Arbor tossed the curtain aside and climbed onto the soft cushion to lie down. She rolled around on it and hugged a soft pillow to comfortably take a nap. Gilded Garden should be bustling with noise and excitement now, right? Miss Chiao curled her lips, and there was an unclear sense of schadenfreude in her heart. It was already past noon when the group arrived at Half Moon Cliff. At a glance, a large expanse of lush green fertile fields entered everyone's sight. There were many farmsteads at the foot of the mountain, and many villagers had gathered, forming a rather lively little village. The fields at the foot of the mountain now belonged to Lady Chiao Chiao. Prince Kong was really reliable. Not only did he send her a lot of fields, but he also provided her with enough servants to take care of the field. Everyone abandoned their carriages and climbed up the mountain, admiring the beautiful scenery along the way. There were a few guards at the entrance of the mountain path. When they saw Arbor's group coming over, they were puzzled and wanted to stop them. Xiao Mu took out the jade identity tablet that the old prince had given her from her pocket and waved it before the guards. Those people immediately bowed respectfully, unable to hide the excitement on their faces. This lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Greetings, Crown Prince, Crown Princess. The people here had long known that Prince Kong had given the entire mountaintop and fertile farmland to the young Crown Princess. There was probably no one else in the sovereign capital who could do such a thing. Naturally, these mountain guards were a gift from the mountain. Their current master was the little Crown Princess. How could they not greet her politely? Arbor's group didn't allow them to follow. They waved their hands and continued to stay where they were. Splendid Mountain Villa was built at the top of Half Moon Cliff. The entire villa exuded a simple and dignified aura. If one looked down from the sky, they would be able to see the inner garden of Splendid Mountain Villa. There was a very wide crescent-shaped hot spring belt, and several springs were emitting a warm white steam. The hot spring garden was bathed in white mist and filled with a celestial aura. When the group arrived at the entrance of Splendid Mountain Villa on the cliff, it was already 5 in the morning. Chapter 2686. When Steward Fong of Half Moon Cliff heard that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess had come to the manor, he immediately led all the senior stewards, maids, and manservants of the manor to greet them. So when Arbor and the others arrived at the entrance, they saw dozens of people lined up to greet them. "Welcome, Crown Prince and Crown Princess." Arbor's gaze shifted to the plump steward with a kind face and waved at him. The plump steward hurriedly ran forward and greeted them with a smile. "Crown Princess, this lowly one's surname is Fong. We didn't know that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess had come to the manor. Please forgive us for not going out to meet you." When the plump steward saw the expressionless Lord Xiao, he felt a bit guilty. After all, they weren't familiar with these people's temperaments, so the servants felt a bit uneasy. Arbor naturally wouldn't make things difficult for the servants. As long as others didn't find trouble with her, she would close her eyes and let bygones be bygones. She wasn't that particular about whether to welcome them or not. "Lead the way." Yes. The plump steward hurriedly nodded and personally led them to the hot spring in the inner court. In addition to the half-moon-shaped hot spring in the inner court, the layout of this splendid manor was picturesque and beautiful. The entire manor was surrounded by mountains and rivers. Behind the cliff was a large lake, and the silver waterfall at the top of the cliff was like a flying dragon, surging endlessly. The plump steward led them to a place called the Misty Rain Pavilion. After tea and refreshments and a short rest, the little girl decided to soak in the hot spring. Prince Mo and young Master Mu saw that she was happy, so they let her play as she pleased. Mo Lien was a bit helpless. It was all eldest brother-in-law's fault for insisting on coming. Otherwise, he could have accompanied his wife in the hot spring. Alas, man proposes, God disposes. If he had known, he wouldn't have come to the manor today. The little girl soaked in the half-moon spring alone for more than an hour, having a lot of fun. When she climbed ashore, her entire face was flushed and bright and beautiful. When she returned to the Misty Rain Pavilion, she saw 2 men playing chess out of boredom. The exchange of blows was like a smokeless battle, and the killing was already set. Seeing the little girl running back, the 2 of them raised their eyes at the same time and looked at her. Madame Jojo had changed into a bright red dress and a jade hairpin was inserted into her hair. Mo Lien wanted to laugh when she saw her red battle suit. The little guy was definitely up to something. Mu Xingqian's eyes were bright as he looked at his little sister. His heart was filled with joy. His younger sister was really beautiful. According to his third uncle, his younger sister and mother looked quite similar. He wondered how beautiful his mother was when she was young. "You've been brewing for so long. Come and have some tea first." Mo Lien waved at her and pulled her to sit beside her. "You 2 played chess for the whole afternoon?" The little fellow picked up the teacup and curiously glanced at the table. He lost interest in a single glance and it was so boring. If it wasn't for his brother-in-law sitting here, would he let her go? Lady Jojo blinked her eyes. "Who? Of course, your husband has won this round." Mu Xingqian gave him a snort. This cunning Prince Mo. He could tell that this person was one face in front of his little sister and another in front of others. What a black-bellied fellow. The Mu family should be done with the ruckus. Arbor tilted his head. "Why don't we go back?" They should wait until they were done with the ruckus before going back. This was because Jojo only wanted to know the result. There was no need to know the process. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Chapter 2687. Mu Xingqian's expression darkened when he recalled his father's actions. Mu Xingqian nodded with a heavy heart and said, "Okay, let's go back and take a look." The three stood up together. When they returned to the city, Jojo wanted to ride a horse. Prince Mo was amused and reached out to carry her onto the horse, but he retracted his hand from his brother-in-law's glare. His brother-in-law specially found a jujube-colored stallion for Jojo and led it to Sir Jojo. He glared at Mu Xingqian's restless hands and glared at him. So infuriating. Prince Mo glanced at his wifey aggrievedly. Jojo covered her mouth and rolled her large eyes at him. She happily hopped onto the horse and galloped off with a slap on the horse's butt. Let's see who's the first to return to the city. Mo Lien couldn't help but find it amusing. Looking at the little fellow's cheerful back, he quickly mounted his horse and chased after her. "Xiao Xiao, are there any benefits to being the first to return to the city?" "Benefits?" Arbor's spirited voice was heard. "There's good food." Hui Feng couldn't help but chuckle. He urged his horse to follow closely behind Mo Lien and Mu Xingqian. "Your Highness, let's hurry. There won't be any good food if we're late." Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. It was already evening when they returned to the Mu residence. They arrived at the Mu residence's entrance under the red sunset glow. What they didn't expect was that Mu Jingfeng had left early in the morning and had just returned home, yet Madame's gilded garden seemed to be in an uproar. Fortunately, Madame Mu had nowhere to vent her anger after holding it in for the entire afternoon. The moment they arrived at the entrance, they were welcomed toward Gilded Garden. Arbor originally didn't want to watch this farce, but he thought that Mu Jingfeng must be fuming to death right now, so it would be good to see his agitated appearance. Thus, he agreed to go to Gilded Garden. She lowered her head to look at her bright red battle attire and hopped briskly. Her small hand was caught by Prince Mo. The Crown Prince looked at her in amusement and said softly, "Put on a serious expression." Was Jojo-sama not serious? A certain little person blinked and raised his little hand to touch his little face subconsciously. Actually, there wasn't the slightest change in expression on her stoic face. Only Prince Mo, who was familiar with her, could see through her stoic face to see her elated mood. The little fellow grinned and suppressed his good mood of watching a good show. He followed the maidservant who led the way into the Gilded Garden. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the Gilded Garden, he heard the sounds of crying. Mu Jingfeng's flustered and exasperated roars were mixed in, which inexplicably made one feel refreshed. For some reason, Jojo-sama felt very comfortable when he saw how uncomfortable they were. Mu Jingfeng turned his head and saw the three culprits walking in. His face instantly contorted. "Arbor!" Mu Jingfeng roared. "Look at what you've done." Mu Xingqian looked at his father in disbelief. "Father, what did younger sister do? Was it she who told you to have a mistress and raise her in mother's courtyard? Was it she who told you to secretly have a child with a mistress behind your wife's back?" This person was simply unreasonable. He actually had the cheek to roar at his younger sister? Mu Jingfeng's face instantly contorted, and he couldn't help but roar, "Mu Xingqian, watch your attitude." He had long been dissatisfied with this son of his. He was usually cold and expressionless, but at crucial moments, he liked to drag his father down. Chapter 2688. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have any other sons, did he think that he could continue being the Mu family's young master? He didn't know what was good for him. Sure enough, that woman's children weren't easy to worry about. "Mu family head, what are you shouting about?" Prince Mo coldly swept a glance at him. Mu Jingfeng swallowed his anger and cupped his hands toward the Crown Prince. "Greetings, Crown Prince." Aggrieved, truly aggrieved. When others were fathers-in-law, it was always the son-in-law who was courteous to his father-in-law and saluted upon meeting. But here, it was the complete opposite. Mu Jingfeng still didn't know the Crown Prince's attitude toward the Qiao family's two elders. If he saw such a stark contrast, he would surely faint from anger. Mu Qingya was currently sitting in the main seat. Aside from some sadness on her face, there wasn't any resentment or dissatisfaction. Arbor sized her up and became increasingly vigilant. Ever since she returned, The impression that this Madame Mu gave her was that her words and actions were watertight. Everyone in the family, including the clan head and even her mother's loyal servant, Chin Yi, was full of praise for her. Arbor only trusted her intuition. No one was perfect. For a woman who could conceal her emotions so tightly and act so watertight, Arbor instinctively felt that there was a big problem with her. Of course, without substantial evidence, Arbor naturally wouldn't foolishly say something without evidence. Madame Mu had been in charge of the family for more than a decade. Arbor naturally wouldn't believe that a smart woman like her didn't have a group of forces in her hands. At Madame Mu's feet, an 18 or 19-year-old woman was currently kneeling. Her delicate face had a pair of misty almond-shaped eyes, and she was sobbing as she hugged her child. Mu Qingyao's voice was somewhat cold. If master wants to take in a concubine, no one will stop him. Why should he raise her outside? Now that rumors are spreading outside, it's not pleasant to hear. Mu Jingfeng's expression was very ugly. He had already heard rumors among the people on his way back. Some busybodies even spread his romantic affairs everywhere like storytellers, saying that he gave his ex-wife's dowry to his mistress, and that he was caught red-handed by the eldest young master while fooling around it simply made him lose all his face. It was all because of these two unfilial sons. All these years, he only had one son, Mu Xingchen. What was wrong with raising a beautiful mistress and wanting to have a few more sons? Was it worth it to make such a fuss? This pair of unfilial sons actually barged into Qiong-er's court. Their behavior was so unruly that it made one's hair stand on end. The crown princess isn't someone who lacks a courtyard. Why would she barge into someone else's courtyard and do such a shameless thing? This crown prince let people barge in. Father, don't blame little sister. I was the one who forced my way in. Before Arbor could rebuke Mu Jingfeng, the crown prince and Mu Xingchen spoke up at the same time. Mu Jingfeng was fuming. Now that the inner court was on fire, he had to deal with Arbor, that unfilial daughter, and appease Madame Mu. It was really a headache. Although you are the crown prince, it's not right for you to trespass on private property. What house did we break into? I think you've gone senile. Arbor directly retorted. This crown princess is going to sue her for forcibly occupying a residence and encroaching on my mother's private property. Arbor coldly shouted, Mu Jingfeng, I gave you face, but you don't want it. You brought this upon yourself. Originally, she did not want to make things so ugly. Since this Mu Jingfeng had no sincerity in returning her things, she would make him swallow his pride. Spit out everything that belonged to her. Chapter 2689. What 3-day deadline? Bah, this great aunt is in a bad mood, so I won't give it. I must fully support my wife when she causes trouble. The crown prince's eyes lit up, and he turned to order Huifeng, go invite the capital governor over. Also, bring the group of accountants this crown prince asked you to find over. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that he fell backwards, simply wanting to vomit blood. He truly didn't expect that this black-hearted couple would really dare to escalate the matter. Were they shameless? They forced his father to hand over his mother's private property as soon as they returned to the Mu family. Would it be good for their reputation if word got out? Mu Xingchen expressed no objection. He was thoroughly disappointed in this father of his. Looking at his father's appearance, he was truly unwilling and simply didn't want to return his mother's dowry shop to his younger sister. If it weren't for his brother-in-law's status and the fact that he had the power to get it back, if it were someone else, they would probably have to swallow their anger and squander it. The capital governor's speed was surprisingly fast. In less than half an hour, he hurriedly rushed over with several dozen guards. This person's surname was Chow, and he was known as Stubborn Chow. One had to know that this name had its origin. Because this official Chow was very upright and plain-spoken, he repeatedly went against the imperial family, so everyone called him Stubborn Chow. There was once when Linchuan Prince's heir returned to the capital and rode his horse on Changle Street, injuring 5 commoners. Stubborn Chow was rather swift and decisive, and after catching someone, he lifted their robes and publicly flogged them 50 times. This angered Linchuan Prince so much that he entered the palace that very night to sue Stubborn Chow, accusing him of disrespecting the imperial family. The emperor was so annoyed by Linchuan Prince that he removed Stubborn Chow from his position and sent him to prison. Unexpectedly, the capital's newly appointed capital governor couldn't suppress those silk pants in the imperial city at all, causing the capital to be in a mess. In his anger, the emperor released Stubborn Chow again. Stubborn Chow was sent to and out of prison 5 times and removed from his position 4 times, yet he was still firmly seated in this position. Thus, everyone understood that the emperor was still rather fond of this Stubborn Chow right now. Jojo was also rather fond of this Stubborn Chow. As soon as Lord Chow took the deed from Jojo, he put on a businesslike expression and ordered the mistress's family to move out of the house immediately. Not only that, he also ordered them to pay a fine for occupying the house for a period of time. Seeing the little white flower beside Mu Jingfeng sobbing uncontrollably, Xiao Mu felt greatly satisfied. She did not know why, but she felt that this little white flower's face was not pleasing to the eye. Now that she had taken a closer look, she realized that the little white flower's eyes were quite similar to hers. It was said that her eyes were very similar to her mother's. Could it be that Mu Jingfeng still liked her mother? Arbor felt as if he had eaten a fly. Stubborn Chow was very efficient in his work. He directly had Mu Jingfeng take out all the relevant accounts on the dowry list. Mu Qingya still hadn't recovered from the shock of her husband having an affair, and now she was ordered to hand over the account book by Chao Jieto. Her face was pale and her body was on the verge of collapsing. She could fall to the ground at any moment. When Mu Rochuan rushed in, the Gilded Garden was in a mess. She hurriedly squeezed to her mother's side and glared at Arbor's group. "What are you doing? What did mother do wrong? Why are you angering her like this?" Stubborn Chow calmly said, "The government is handling official matters. Unrelated people, please step aside." Shin. Mu Qingya struggled to stand up. "Lord Chow, don't worry. I'll have my subordinates sort out the accounts." Chapter 2690. It's just that there are a lot of accounts. I'm afraid this isn't something that can be sorted out in a day or two. It's fine. This crown prince has plenty of manpower here. The crown prince indifferently said. With a wave of his hand, he called in the 100 or so accountants waiting outside the door. This was really stabbing Mu Jingfeng's chest with hundreds of knives. Mu Jingfeng's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Chao Jieto had an indifferent expression as he silently gave the crown prince a thumbs up in his heart. As expected of my family's crown prince. He has connections and authority. Beautifully done. The most annoying thing was this kind of coward who seized his wife's private property. He didn't know how to rely on himself and only stared at his wife's things. What a good-for-nothing fellow. How could he be the Mu family's head? Chao Jieto disdained him in his heart, but he maintained an upright and plain-spoken expression. Since His Highness the Crown Prince has already prepared the manpower, then let's start work as soon as possible. Although there are a lot of accounts from over a decade, we still have to calculate everything clearly. We have enough manpower. Sir Jojo was expressionless, but he gave Sir Chao several thumbs up in his heart. Sure enough, Sir Chao was very impressive. If he had known earlier, he would have asked him to step forward earlier. That way, she wouldn't have to spend all day chattering with Mu Jingfeng. "Sir Chao, you've worked hard," Mu Jingfeng said when he saw his sinful daughter talking to Chao Jieto. "I reckon that with so many people, we can settle the accounts in one night. Let's go to Yulan Court for a drink to pass the time." "It's no trouble, no trouble." Sir Chao was simply overwhelmed by this favor and hastily nodded. This official will naturally comply. Another few hundred knives stabbed Mu Jingfeng's chest. If vomiting blood now could be of any use, he would rather vomit a whole vat of blood first. This little bastard actually invited Chao Jieto to eat and drink, planning to sit and wait for the results to come out in one night? This sinful daughter, sinful daughter. He didn't have any path of retreat at all. Arbor summoned the head accountant. "Calculate properly. Be on time. I'll treat you guys to snacks later. After you're done, I'll give you 10 times the salary." Tycoon Crown Princess. The 100 or so accountants' faces instantly bloomed with smiles. They nodded repeatedly and said in unison, "Thank you, Crown Princess. This one will definitely work hard to settle the accounts." I won't let down the Crown Prince and Crown Princess trust. Thus, the gilded garden was brightly lit, and the sound of the abacus could be heard throughout the night. These over 100 accountants were the best of the best in the imperial capital. Apart from a portion of them being the Crown Prince's own, the rest were borrowed from the various monarch residences and aristocratic families. Everyone wanted to show their faces in front of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, so they worked hard to settle their debts and work hard. That night, other than taking a short break to eat some snacks and tea, he didn't sleep at all. His hands didn't even stop playing with the abacus. By the time it was 7 in the morning, the accounts of the past years had been calculated clearly and neatly stacked on one side according to the various trades and professions. By the time Kai Xiu came to Yulan Garden to inform them that the accounts had been sorted out, Arbor had just finished his breakfast with Mo Lian, Mu Xingchen, Lord Chao, and the others. He happily followed Kai Xiu to Gilded Garden. She ordered the servants to carry the breakfast to the Gilded Garden. As soon as she entered, she said with a stoic face, "Everyone has worked hard all night. Everyone, please go to the side hall and have some breakfast. Mr. Shi, you've worked hard and stay behind." Mr. Shi was the head accountant and also Mo Lian's subordinate. He bowed and saluted, then retreated to the Crown Prince's side. Chapter 2691. Kai Chi nimbly ran in and called for people to bring out a few armchairs for Mo Lian, Arbor, and the others to sit down. After the two happily sat down, they looked at the ashen-faced Mu Jingfeng. With one look, they felt that Mu Jingfeng seemed to have aged 3 to 5 years in a single night from his worry. Wasn't it just a loss of money? Was there a need to be so distressed? Arbor disdainfully pursed his lips. Mr. Shi stepped forward and spread out a sorted ledger, reading, according to actual calculations, just the Kaidai Pavilion, Precious Painting Workshop, and Despondent Pavilion alone have earned over 10 million spirit coins every year for the past 15 years. With the business flourishing in recent years, just the Kaidai Pavilion's profit alone reached 20 million spirit coins last year. If it's calculated in terms of gold, silver, and other ordinary items, the value is even higher. There are vast fields in the northern part of the city, and the annual profit can reach about 800,000 spirit coins. As for the 3 residences in the southern part of the city, aside from one for Miss Cheong, the other 2 are rented out to others. The annual rent is about 30,000 spirit coins. In addition, there are 14 shops in the western, southern, and northern parts of the city. Especially the medicine shop and talisman shop in the southern part of the city, their annual profit can reach 1 million spirit coins. There are 2 fields in the eastern suburbs of the city. The income is relatively low, and they can earn about 50,000 spirit coins every year. As for the 3 fields in the northern suburbs of the city, their income is rather high. They earn 300,000 spirit coins every year. In addition, the income has been rising year after year. With this, in the past 15 years, Mr. Shi picked up an abacus and quickly calculated. Excluding those expenses, the total net profit can reach at least 220 million spirit coins. Mu Jingfeng simply didn't know what this person was talking about. He only felt that his mouth was opening and closing, and every word seemed to be digging a bloody hole in his heart. 220 million spirit coins? Mu Qingya was helped to sit down. She also felt dizzy and was somewhat at a loss. Arbor nodded. "Have you calculated the expenses of Mu Jingfeng's concubines and illegitimate children all these years?" "Yes, the Crown Princess. It's all calculated. Madame Mu's monthly salary is 20,000 spirit coins. Miss Mu's monthly salary is the same as young Master Mu's, 10,000 spirit coins. As for the Mu family's 4 concubines, each of them costs 3,000 spirit coins. The 3 concubine-born daughters each have a monthly salary of 5,000. There are a total of 74 servants in the main branch. Every month they have to pay enough." Mu Jingfeng roared in anger. He felt that he had lost all his face today. The most hateful thing was, stubborn Chao was still drinking tea at the side, listening calmly in the midst of chaos. This kind of family matter was actually brought to the court. He had simply lost all his face, both inside and outside. Arbor mockingly glanced at Mu Jingfeng and smiled sarcastically. The Mu family's head is spending his ex-wife's dowry, yet he's quite unrestrained. Although the prices of goods in the Great Divine Prefecture were high, they were generally 5 times higher than the middle 6 prefectures. However, 100 spirit coins were enough for an ordinary family's daily living expenses. The monthly allowance that the Mu family head gave to the concubine was as high as 100 spirit coins a day. This did not include the clothes, shoes, socks, rouge, face powder, and gold and jade jewelry that were made for the 4 seasons every year. How could he have such a big face? How much is there in total? Have you calculated it yet? Arbor coldly asked. For the past 15 years, the main branch has given the masters a monthly allowance of more than 15 million spirit coins. Chapter 2692. There's also the 5 house renovations and expansions in the past 15 years, the 4 seasons worth of clothes and accessories for the masters and misses, the auction house's purchase of precious medicinal herbs, spirit tools, and so on. Shut up! Mu Jingfeng bellowed. He really wished he could go up and stuff Mr. Shi's mouth. The Mu family's eldest branch's expenses have been rising year by year, and it's very extravagant and wasteful. After some calculations, we've spent close to 90 million in the past 15 years. He really took her mother's dowry and ate her whole family without spitting out the bones. Arbor nodded. Mu Jingfeng was already trembling in anger. He pointed at Arbor and said, "Why, you unfilial daughter? Unfilial daughter! If it weren't for your stepmother mediating and managing the shops all these years, would Kai-Dai Pavilion, Precious Painting Workshop, and Despondent Pavilion be as prosperous as they are today? Even if you snatch these 3 shops back, you won't be able to manage them well." Arbor swept her a disdainful glance. "So what if I can't manage them well? I just like to smash them for fun, and it's none of your business." Lord Chao's face was taut as he inwardly gave the little crown princess a thumbs up. Well done. There was really no need to be polite to this stinky man who shamelessly usurped his wife's business. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that his face turned pale, and he felt dizzy. "Why, you unfilial daughter! Enough nonsense." Arbor waved his hand and turned to look at Mu Qingya. He said indifferently, "It's true that Madame Mu has managed the business well all these years, but the things you've taken from my mother aren't insignificant, right? You've spent 90 million in 15 years' worth of expenses so comfortably." Arbor coldly said, "Madame Mu, I'll give you an annual salary of 2 million. I'll give you 30 million for 15 years. Your Mu family's eldest branch spent 90 million on my mother, so you just have to spit out 60 million. In addition, you'll make a profit of 220 million, not a cent less. Prepare everything for me within 3 days. Otherwise, we'll meet His Majesty in the Golden Hall. Just you wait and see." Mu Jingfeng's lips were trembling in anger. "Why, you're simply making trouble for no reason. When did we use your mother's money for our daily expenses? It's not like I don't have any businesses. Why, you intolerable bullying, intolerable bullying. Why are you so sure that their daily expenses are Long Chuyun's money? Moreover, didn't they just say that they made a profit of 220 million? Even if he spent 60 million spirit coins, no, the total price should be 220 million spirit coins. Why was there a need for another 60 million on top of the 220 million? Wasn't this extra 60 million just plain robbery? Did he think he was a fool?" Mu Jingfeng trembled in anger. "You know very well whether it's my mother's money or not." Xiao Mu gazed at him coldly and declared, "In short, you can't give me a single cent less than the 280 million spirit coins compensation." With that, he turned to look at the capital governor. "Lord Chao, I need you to look over the account books. What do you think of the way I've handled it?" "Very reasonable." Lord Chao took the account book and looked at it. He quickly praised, "The Crown Princess does things flawlessly. This official is truly impressed." "You bootlicker." Mu Jingfeng was so angry that his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His eyes were bulging and he was panting heavily. Mo Lian was also speechless. Who could come and tell him if this stubborn Chao's temperament had changed? Who said that stubborn Chao was hard to talk to? How easy was he to talk to his Jojo? Chapter 2693. Stubborn Chow muttered to himself for a bit before saying, however, for such a large sum of spirit coins, 3 days of preparation is a bit too rushed. Crown Princess, how about we extend the time limit to 6 days? This official guarantees that the debt collection team will smoothly collect all of these debts. This stubborn Chow was clearly a very reliable person when it came to doing things. Arbor immediately gave him face and nodded expressionlessly. Then, I'll have to trouble Lord Chow to take care of it. Not at all, not at all. This official should do it, should do it. The two chatted happily, causing Prince Mo to find it somewhat funny. After the commotion, Arbor sent someone to send Lord Chow off, then held the Crown Prince's hand and left together. Before leaving Gilded Garden, Lord Jojo said, "Prepare well." Then there was nothing else. Just these 4 words angered Mu Jingfeng so much that he slumped into his chair. Lord Chow swiftly set up a debt collection team led by the governors Wu Shaoyin. He organized 17 to 18 subordinates and moved into the Mu estate that night. Before the next day, this matter had become the topic of conversation in the entire imperial capital. When everyone saw each other in tea houses and restaurants, they couldn't help but whisper, "Hey, hey, did you hear? Family head Mu kept a mistress in his wife's dowry residence and was caught red-handed by eldest young Master Mu. She's already in the residence now." How could I not have heard? Look at how big the commotion has become. I heard that the mistress who's like a little white flower has angered Madame Mu half to death. Tisk histe, how pitiful. Family head Mu can even bear to hurt such a gentle and kind woman like Madame Mu. Oh, you don't understand, right? The old saying is absolutely correct. A wife is inferior to a concubine, and a concubine is inferior to a mistress. I didn't expect that the prim and proper family head Mu to be so dissolute in private. Someone immediately sneered, "Dissolute my ass, I think he's just shameless. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so brazen as to let his mistress into his wife's dowry residence." That's right. That's his wife's private property. How could he do that? No wonder the Crown Princess flew into a rage and ordered him to hand over his wife's dowry. I heard that the Mu family's patriarch is in a terrible fix these days. He's really unlucky. That's right, the officials of the capital government organized a debt collection team and directly entered the Mu family. I heard that you have to pay it back within 6 days. That's hilarious. Everyone gloated for a while. Anyway, the knife didn't fall on their heads, so they were especially happy to see other people being dug out with a blunt knife. In particular, that person was the patriarch of a great family that ordinary people like them could never hope to touch. Since he was so unlucky, everyone was happy to watch the show from the side. The mentality of some people was somewhat distorted. If you were living well, they would lower their heads and fawn over you. Once you fell from your high and mighty position and were unlucky, they would mock you even more merrily than those who usually couldn't be bothered with you. The next day, Mu Jingfeng had people go out on the streets to ask around. He didn't know how much the matter had escalated, but he was so angry that he nearly died. Mu Jingfeng hid in the court alone and threw a fit. No matter who he looked at, no one was pleasing to the eye. Madame Mu also felt extremely wronged. Who did she offend? Chapter 2694. While everyone was scolding Mu Jingfeng, they couldn't help but mention her. The next day, Madame Mu fell ill after a sleepless night. She didn't leave her room in Gilded Garden and merely rested on the soft couch. The wet nurse, Nanny Chiu, was attending to her from the side, her eyes filled with heartache. She had always seen how hard Madame had worked all these years. Now that something like this happened, even if Madame didn't say anything, she must be feeling terrible in her heart. "Madam." Song Lu angrily ran in and couldn't help but scold as soon as she entered, "That little slut is here again. She's kneeling outside and begging for forgiveness. I told Bai Hui to chase her away." Madame Mu slightly raised her head and sighed. "Bring her in, madam." Song Lu angrily stomped her feet. Her madam was good at everything, but her personality was too kind. It was fine if she treated those old concubines well. Aside from concubine Huang, who gave birth to fourth Miss Mu Ro Yi, the other 3 concubines didn't have any children, so they couldn't be arrogant. The other 2 bedwarmers were of low status, so they were naturally controlled by Madame. However, this time, this little white flower, Cheong-e, that Master brought back from outside, couldn't be compared to the previous ones. This Cheong-e was only 17 or 18 years old and had a delicate and gentle appearance. Most importantly, she already gave birth to a daughter for Master. Yesterday, Master named the little slut that the mistress gave birth to Mu Ro Shui. When Song Lu thought of this, she became even angrier. She felt that her madam wasn't worthy. Why was that mistress so rampant? Wasn't it all because she had Master's favor? Mu Qingya's brows were tinged with faint melancholy, and she softly sighed. It's fine as long as Master likes her. If he had brought her home earlier, there wouldn't be so much trouble today. A large part of the reason for her anger wasn't that Mu Jingfeng found a mistress outside, but that he had to hide it from her, causing the matter to reach this point where it couldn't be resolved. She already knew that Mu Jingfeng was talented, intelligent, and affectionate. She was an ordinary person who found it difficult to cultivate. It was all thanks to Mu Jingfeng's trust and love for her that she was able to sit in the position of the family's madam. How could she dare to ask for anything else? She only hoped that her husband could be with her for a long time. As for the rest, it's fine as long as my husband likes it. Song Lu almost cried out when she saw her mistress compromise like this. She couldn't help but resent the little white flower kneeling outside the door even more. If it wasn't for that bitch, would Madam be so sick that she couldn't even get out of bed today? Yuan Qiong'er walked in, swaying with each step like a little white flower. When she saw Madame Mu, she knelt on the ground with a plop and confessed in tears. Madame Mu naturally wouldn't argue with a mistress, but she wasn't in the mood to comfort her. After waking her up, he simply instructed her to stay in the residence with ease, and then sent her away. As soon as Yuan Qiong'er left the gilded garden, her face was twisted with anger. She thought about how she had knelt in that woman's courtyard early in the morning, acting humble and submissive, wanting to get along with her peacefully. She didn't expect that he wouldn't give her any favors at all. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have acted like that and knelt in that woman's courtyard early in the morning. Thinking of Mu Qingya's arrogant attitude just now, Yuan Qiong'er felt uncomfortable all over. So what if she was the madam of the family? She looked down on her so much. Even if she didn't fight for a bun, she had to fight for her dignity and make her regret in the past. Chapter 2695. Arbor sent people to the Gilded Garden and his father's courtyard to inquire about the situation. When he heard that the debt collection team's work was proceeding in an orderly manner, Sir Jojo was very happy. He let Kai Xiu gather all the accountants who had worked all night and had enough rest the night before. In a good mood, he gave everyone 20 times their wages. Originally, they had agreed on 10 times the pay, but now, it was doubled again. Everyone was overjoyed. Reaching out to take the 2,000 spirit coins that the Crown Princess prepared for each person, everyone's face was blooming with joy. After giving out the wages, Arbor let everyone leave. Even if some of them couldn't control their mouths and spread the news that the Crown Princess would take over a lot of dowry shops, it didn't matter. The little rich lady was not afraid of people talking. In any case, she had inherited thousands of acres of fertile land, 5 prosperous shops, and the half-moon cliff from Prince Kong. The news had already spread far and wide in the capital. As for who spread the news, it was easy to guess. It must be Princess Kang's adopted daughter, Miss Luiren. Not convinced? Just hold it in. Who asked Sir Jojo to be so likable? After so many days, this and that, the Crown Princess had already transformed from a little village girl into a big winner who had reached the pinnacle of life. So be it, she didn't care anyway. Early in the morning, Sir Jojo, who was living a very happy and comfortable life, sat down cross-legged and cultivated for a while. Suddenly he heard Qiuqiu say to him, Master Silver, Qi Xianxian and the rest have all come out of seclusion and are probably going to advance in rank. Let them go out and advance in rank. Otherwise, the spiritual energy in Paradise Planet will be used up. Sir Qiuqiu had collected so much spiritual energy with great difficulty, He couldn't let those little bastards advance in rank and cause a disaster. The stingy Sir Chiochio was secretly scheming in his heart. Arbor was so smart, he naturally knew what it was thinking and couldn't help but find it funny. It was good to advance in rank. Let Xian and the rest go to the Mu family's back mountain, where there was a lot of spiritual energy in heaven and earth. They would naturally advance in rank. It was also good for his cultivation. A white light flashed. Qi Xian, Duan Mu Qing, and Little Fatty appeared beside her. Without a second word, Arbor called Hui Feng to bring them to the spacious area behind the Mu clan's mountain to advance in rank. Qi Xian, Duan Mu Qing, and the others had been in seclusion for a long time this time. Their cultivation levels would definitely improve greatly. Just thinking about it made her happy for her friends. She was happier than if she had advanced. Mr. Jojo pushed open the door and walked out. He looked in the direction where his friends had left and pursed his lips. This was the scene that Emolien saw when she walked over. The little guy was standing at the door under the sunlight. His eyes were sparkling and he was extremely adorable. He flew to her side and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her soft little cheek. Jojo, what's the good news? Xian and the others have come out. Crown Prince Mo the Great immediately harumphed. How could this be considered a good thing? Qi Xian and the rest of the troublesome fellows had come out. This meant that there would be even more people who would fight with him for the little one's attention in the future. Arbor blinked and glanced at Prince Mo, Xian and the others went to the back mountain to advance in rank. Prince Mo forced himself to be happy. That's perfect. There's a banquet in 5 days. Let them participate as well. Chapter 2697. Soon, an 18 to 19-year-old girl dressed in black with a curvaceous figure stood at Yulan Court's entrance with a cold expression, holding a sword horizontally in her hand. Less than a quarter of an hour later, a commotion broke out in front of Yulan Court's entrance. 2 fierce-looking old nannies came over with fierce expressions, saying that they were under family head's orders to invite Miss Chiao to the main courtyard. Li Ye's face was cold as she blocked them. One of the old nannies started cursing indistinctly. Before she could finish cursing, her head was separated from her body. The other was scared witless. How could she dare to linger at Yulan Court's entrance? She scrambled back to Mu Jingfeng's main courtyard to report this matter. Mu Jingfeng angrily smashed a teacup on the ground. Wu Xiaoyin also angrily smashed a cup. This official is under the Crown Princess orders to legally and reasonably collect the debt. Family head Mu, please cooperate. Don't waste everyone's time. Now that the Crown Princess wants to collect the debt early, it's also reasonable and reasonable. If you don't have enough spirit coins, please open the treasury. We have a professional accounting team that will convert the treasures obtained from the auction into spirit coins for you to calculate. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that he wanted to fling his sleeves and leave. Wu Xiaoyin was also enraged. If family head Mu doesn't cooperate, then we can only request the Purple Forest Guard to forcefully carry out the settlement. Fuck, why don't you try saying that again? Mu Jingfeng's eyes were spitting fire as he glared at Wu Xiaoyin as if he was looking at an enemy. He pointed a finger at the youth's face. Why you? Very good. This official believes that I have inherited Lord Chao's style. It's indeed very good. Bah! When your family's Lord Chao sees the Crown Princess, what kind of style is there? What kind of style is there? He's just a bootlicker, all right? Wu Xiaoyin coldly looked at Mu Jingfeng and said, Family head Mu, I advise you not to struggle anymore. Cooperate properly with handing over the spirit coins and resources. The sooner the settlement is completed, the sooner our debt collection team can leave the Mu family. Mu Jingfeng was so angry that his entire body trembled. But looking at the situation now, if he did not open the main branch's treasury, this matter really wouldn't be over. Mu Liang, Mu Jingfeng roared. Take them there. Keep a close eye on them. If there's even a single cent missing from the spiritual tools and medicinal herbs, I'll hold you responsible. Yes. Mu Liang couldn't help but sigh. Father and daughter, why did they have to create such a scene where the 2 enemies' eyes blazed with hatred? If he had a daughter, he would definitely dote on her. Why did he have to do this? Sai Mu family head swallowed a mouthful of blood in exasperation. With a dark and handsome face, he walked straight in the direction of Yulan Court. This rebellious girl, this rebellious girl. He stopped halfway and angrily punched a tree, breaking a small sapling. After Arbor finished drawing over 100 talismans, he stored all the talismans into a purple storage talisman. He expressionlessly sat on the soft couch and looked at the black-clothed girl in front of him. Find someone from the night pavilion and spread the news. Say that Mu Jingfeng is suffering because of his pride, and now he has fallen to the point where he has to use auction items to exchange for spirit coins to repay his debt. After you're done with the matter above, go to the restaurant, catch a few ruffians who are spreading rumors, and directly kill them. Then, very gently tell everyone that they are rumor-mongers and ask everyone not to believe in rumors. Don't scare others, got it? Everyone. Chapter 2698. You told Li Yi to go directly to the restaurant and find the culprits to execute them on the streets. You even said that you had to tell everyone gently and don't scare them. How could that not freaking scare them? Who wouldn't be so scared that their parents wouldn't recognize them after witnessing the death of the rumor-mongers? Xiao Mu creased her brows and said, after you kill them, throw those main culprits who started the rumors into the central plaza. Remember to tie them there so that everyone can see what they look like. You have to politely tell everyone that these people are rumor-mongers and deserve to die. Got it? Li Yi nodded with a deadpan expression. Crown Princess, this subordinate understands. Arbor nodded, but still worriedly reminded, remember not to scare them. Eunuch Chen, who was standing at the side with his head bowed, stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. Crown Princess, are you really not here to make a fool of yourself? The Crown Princess had a solemn expression. Seeing that Li Yi understood her words, she nodded and waved her hand to send her off. After the sun set, the Crown Prince finally extricated himself from the Emperor's place. Before he could ask about the rumor, he saw Li Yi walk in. Greetings to the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. How did it go? The young Crown Princess asked with a serious expression. Well done, Li Yi answered. Eunuch Chen felt like laughing. Could it be that this subordinate resembled her master? This new lass called Li Yi had a stoic face that somewhat resembled the young Crown Prince Consort. Her words and actions were also short and concise. This subordinate followed the Crown Princess's instructions and had the night pavilion's members spread the news. Then, we went to a large restaurant in the imperial capital where people from all walks of life gathered. Sure enough, this subordinate caught 3 ruffians who were spreading the rumor that the Crown Princess was the source of the disaster. This subordinate didn't scare them. This subordinate only drew my sword and splattered their blood on the spot. But the strange thing was, before this subordinate could explain, the people in the restaurant screamed and ran away. The Crown Prince's mouth twitched silently. This subordinate swears that this subordinate really didn't scare anyone. The little Crown Princess nodded. Li Yi said with a cold face, this subordinate will throw these 3 ruffians into the central plaza and hang them on the pillar next to the mission board. I didn't expect that even the people in the square would run away this time. I only had time to say that they were spreading rumors before I could finish. Everyone had disappeared. I'm sure I didn't scare anyone. The little Crown Princess nodded again. Prince Mo was having a hard time trying to hold back his laughter. Li Yi then said, this subordinate had no choice but to hang a sign on the ruffian's body to explain what happened. I believe that anyone with eyes can see it. How did you write it? This subordinate writes, those who spread rumors and slandered the Crown Princess shall die. The little Crown Princess took out a small porcelain bottle from her inner world and handed it to Li Yi. She patted her shoulder and said, not bad. Here's your reward. Prince Mo held his forehead and couldn't help but burst into laughter. The little Crown Princess and Li Yi turned to look at him at the same time and cursed inwardly. Why is the Crown Prince laughing over such a serious matter? It's been hard on you. Go back and rest. The little Crown Princess had Li Yi go back. That night, the rumors about the Crown Princess all disappeared without a trace. Mu Jingfeng's glorious deeds were once again brought up, and the streets and alleys were abuzz with it. The next morning, the Crown Princess brought a group of people and headed to Kaidai Pavilion in a grandiose manner. Chapter 2699. Late that night, the first branch of the Mu family finally collected 280 million in compensation and handed it all to Wu Xiaoying. In addition to the old man who paid 50 million spirit coins, the Mu family head reluctantly took out 100 million spirit coins. The other 130 million was made up with spirit stones, medicinal herbs, spiritual energy, forging materials, and other things of equal value. It can't be said that the first branch of the Mu family really paid a lot of money this time. Wu Xiaoyin found that the young crown princess looked particularly calm when she received the compensation. Looking at the equivalent of 280 million spirit coins, her eyebrows didn't even move. Indifferent, magnificent. She's really a role model that I admire. Wu Xiaoyin silently said that the crown princess was too powerful 3 times in his heart, and he planned to go back and report everything to Lord Chao. Lord Chao was very right to have no integrity to support the young crown princess. Since the young crown princess returned to the capital, those who stood opposite her, which one of them had a good ending? King Jianping? It was useless to hug the great emperor's thigh, and he was still slapped down by the crown princess. The crown prince of Jianping was beaten up by the king of Jianping, and he was still lying in bed and couldn't get up. The Long family, the Gu family, and the young crown princess didn't even have a chance to meet, and they were already trembling from the fine. The Sun Moon Temple could be considered famous in the 3 regions. The holy nun of the temple was slapped by the young crown princess until her parents couldn't recognize her. To bring the holy nun home, they also had to pay a corresponding large compensation this time. It was the Mu family head's turn. The extent of bleeding could be said to be not a great loss of vitality. After this incident, the Mu family head was afraid that the entire first branch of the Mu family would be depressed for who knows how long. How could he be so extravagant when it came to spending in the future? Wu Xiaoyin concluded that people wouldn't die if they didn't court death. Therefore, it was better to weigh their own strength and see if they should court death. The next morning, the crown prince consort, who was feeling refreshed, woke up early in the morning. She had someone set up a carriage and brought along a group of stewards, nannies, and accountants to Kaidai brothel. The crown prince was called into the palace by the great emperor early in the morning. Jojo didn't want the man to be involved in this matter. She could handle it herself, so there was no need for Prince to do it. There were about 20 to 30 horse-drawn carriages, carrying dozens of accountants, hundreds of stewards, nannies, servants, and so on. When the group of people left the Mu residence, it naturally caused a huge commotion. When someone reported this to Madame Mu, Mu Qingya was dumbfounded. The crown princess' first stop is Kaidai Loft. Song Lu stomped her feet and shouted angrily, "The crown princess is completely looking down on you, madam." Mu Qingya couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was originally Sister Chu Yun's business, so it's reasonable for the crown princess to want to take it back. However, how much would the crown princess know about this business? He was worried that the little girl would squander away all of Long Chuyun's shops. Song Lu couldn't help but stomp her feet and shout resentfully, "My dear madam, you're so kind-hearted that you're still worried about her at this time. She really doesn't look down on you, madam." Mu Qingya glared at her. "I'm originally managing these businesses on behalf of the crown princess. Isn't it natural for the crown princess to want to take them back? Don't say such things again in the future. Go inform Qin Yang and the others to have those stewards receive the crown princess well. Don't neglect her." Chapter 2700. Qin Yang greets the crown princess. A middle-aged woman wearing a blue and white cloth jacket with neat features led a group of steward nannies out of Kaidai veranda's main entrance. She bowed to the crown princess, who was leading a group of people, and stopped majestically in front of Kaidai veranda's main entrance. The young crown princess alighted from the carriage and expressionlessly nodded at the woman. Li Yi expressionlessly followed behind. Following closely behind the crown princess were Kai Xiu and Kai Chi, who entered Kaidai veranda. "Serve tea to the crown princess. No need to trouble yourself." The young crown princess waved her hand and randomly found a seat to sit down. It was early in the morning, and Kaidai veranda wasn't open for business yet. Thus, there were only a few steward nannies and waiters in the shop. The shopkeeper was a rather snobbish man in his 50s. Although he was doing his best to suppress the anger in his chest, his gaze towards the young crown princess was very unfriendly. Arbor couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the shopkeeper. She knew that the shopkeepers of Kaidai Veranda and Precious Painting Workshop weren't in power. Qing Yang, on the other hand, was one of the two most popular people by Mu Qingya's side. She was in charge of Kaidai Veranda and Precious Painting Workshop behind the scenes. Even the shopkeeper was extremely courteous when he saw her. "Shopkeeper who?" Arbor called out. An old shopkeeper surnamed who immediately walked out and respectfully bowed. "This old servant is here. From today onwards, shopkeeper who will take over all of Kaidai Veranda's affairs." Arbor didn't waste time with them and directly issued the order. She pointed at the flustered and exasperated shopkeeper of Kaidai Veranda. "Mr. Hong." The accountant surnamed Hong also immediately walked forward and bowed. "From today onwards, Mr. Hong will be in charge of the accounts. You can settle this month's salary with Mr. Hong." "Based on what?" The shopkeeper of Kaidai Veranda glared and roared angrily with a flushed face. "Based on the fact that this crown princess dislikes you," Arbor said coldly. "Is this reason sufficient?" Everyone was speechless. The little crown princess was indeed a powerful person. With just one sentence, the old shopkeeper was rendered speechless. His entire face was flushed red, and his blood vessels were about to burst. Qing Yang suppressed her anger and hurriedly replied in a steady voice, "Crown Prince Consort, you're not familiar with Kaidai Veranda's business. If you rashly take over everything here, I'm afraid it will be a great blow to your future business." "What does it have to do with you?" Sunyang froze and suddenly felt like she couldn't continue the conversation. What was wrong with the crown princess? When you talk to her, she's always choking. When you try to reason with her, she won't listen to reason at all. Her behavior is simply too much. "You just need to hand over the keys to the accountant and the manager," Arbor said coldly. "Didn't your madam tell you that I, the crown princess, am bringing someone to hand over today? If you don't know, then invite your madam over. I, the crown princess, will have a good chat with her." Qing Yang was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. She suppressed the anger in her heart and was unable to react for a long time. "Crown princess, can you be reasonable?" Qing Yang suppressed her anger and tried to talk to the crown princess in a calm voice. "How am I unreasonable?" Arbor looked at her coldly and turned to look at Li Yi and the rest. "I'm unreasonable?" Li Yi drew her sword and said coldly, "Since you guys won't listen to Crown Princess reasoning, then listen to Li Ye's reasoning." Everyone took a step back and stared at Li Yi as if they were facing a great enemy. Chapter 2701. The young crown princess said expressionlessly, "I'm very reasonable." Eunuch Chen, who had followed them into Kaidai Pavilion, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. "I, the crown princess, am not here to ask for a handover. Get your facts straight." The young crown princess said coldly, "I'm here to convey my order. I want you to complete the handover by today. Do you understand?" The old shopkeeper of Kaidai Pavilion was so angry that he almost jumped out of his body. As the shopkeeper of Kaidai Pavilion, his monthly salary was as high as 80,000 spirit coins. Where else could you work these days to get such a high monthly salary? How could he be willing to take a few months' salary and then be miserably chased away by others? The old shopkeeper looked at Qing Yang, who was beside him, for help. Although Qing Yang was also very angry, there was nothing she could do. The crown princess insisted on this and even brought people here to hand over the work. What could she do? The deed to Kaidai Pavilion's shop was clearly the young crown prince consort's property. How could she openly snatch it? She was so angry that her head hurt, but there was nothing she could do. Qing Yang took a few deep breaths and could only look at the young crown princess and say, "Crown princess, isn't it a bit too childish to complete the handover in one day?" The only thing she could do now was to drag things out. She had to drag things out first. Qing Yang was very unwilling to hand over the Kaidai Pavilion, which she had worked so hard to take care of, to someone else to manage. When Kaidai Pavilion was half dead in the past, she and her madam had taken care of the property conscientiously and racked their brains to make Kaidai Pavilion big. The young crown princess didn't do anything. Just because she inherited her mother's dowry, she could take over all the property and enjoy the success she had now? The crown princess glanced at Qin Yang coldly. She knew that she would definitely be stopped when she came to hand over the handover. Mu Qingya's words were pleasant to hear, but her subordinates didn't do anything practical. Their attitude of making excuses annoyed her. Today, settle the accounts with Mr. Hong. Complete the handover of all the work in Kaidai Pavilion with shopkeeper who, the young crown prince consort said expressionlessly. Don't try to play dumb and fool me. If you think I'm young and easy to bully, Arbor glanced at Li Yi. Li Yi immediately unsheathed her sword and slashed at the black wooden table beside her. With a cheech sound, the table broke into pieces. Everyone in the shop turned pale and shrank back hurriedly. The setting of drawing a sword at the slightest disagreement was simply too terrifying. You can try the sword in my hand. Li Yi replied expressionlessly. Qin Yang's heart trembled slightly, and she took a step back with trembling steps. Her eyes flickered as she looked at the crown prince consort in front of her. She took a breath and bowed, saying, Qin Yang understands. Today's matter had to be handed over regardless of whether she wanted to or not. If she didn't give in, according to the little crown princess's usual style of doing things, she really might execute all these rebellious people. Why should she feel sorry for her own life? Qin Yang turned her head and saw that the old shopkeeper still wanted to make a fuss. She glared at him. Go hand over the handover. The old shopkeeper's surname was Zhang. When he heard this, his face immediately flushed red, and his eyes surged with anger and disappointment. Chapter 2702. He said with dissatisfaction, Qin Yang, this Zhang believes that he has been working hard for Kaidai Pavilion all these years. What reason do they have to not want me as the shopkeeper? Li Yi did not say anything and went forward to pick up the chattering shopkeeper. Lu Su. Shopkeeper who? Coming. Shopkeeper who hurriedly followed after her. It was unknown how Li Yi taught the old shopkeeper a lesson, but very quickly, shopkeeper who began to smoothly hand over the business. Kaidai Pavilion's original accountant also followed Mr. Hong to hand over the accounts with a submissive expression. Arbor pointed to 2 nannies in charge and brought along 7 to 8 nimble and agile maids to check the original nannies and waiters in Kaidai Pavilion. Those waiters who served the dishes and washed the dishes did not need to be chased away. Arbor got people to hand over the important jobs such as the accountant. As for the people below, if they wanted to cause trouble, they were all chased away. Those who wanted to do a good job could stay. It did not matter. In less than an hour, the handover in Kaidai Pavilion was on track in an orderly manner. Arbor then brought the remaining people to another prosperous shop on Chengle Street, Precious Painting Workshop. Before leaving, Arbor glanced at the silent Qin Yang and said indifferently, Follow me to Precious Painting Workshop. Qin Yang was so angry that her chest hurt, but there was nothing she could do. Looking at the little crown princess attitude today, it seemed that she was going to go door to door and bring people to hand over these shops. Her movements were so fast that even if she wanted to do something behind the scenes, it was simply too late. Xiao Mu was particular about efficiency when doing things. He directly brought people to Precious Painting Workshop and after some pressure, left the new shopkeeper and accountant in Precious Painting Workshop. Qin Yang could not help but say indifferently, Precious Painting Workshop's business is not as simple as Kaidai Pavilion. Kaidai Pavilion was a place that sold food and drinks. If the little crown princess took over and continued to cook according to the previous recipes, she would be able to maintain her business. On the other hand, Precious Art Workshop specialized in selling jewelry and beauty products. Without those novel flower designs provided by Madame, without Madame's endless ideas, without Madame's handmade makeup powder and fragrances, let's see how many months this Zhenhua workshop can continue operating. The young crown prince consort took a tour around Zhenhua workshop. She had to admit that Madame Mu's business methods were quite unique. The Precious Painting Workshop was not like other shops where the shopkeepers sat in the main hall and locked the jewelry in the counter. The more precious items were brought to the second floor for a tour. The jewelry and makeup products in her shop were all hung on the wall, and it was a dazzling sight to behold. What kind of jewelry do you want? You just have to say the serial number, and a young and beautiful shop assistant will take it for you. The design and appearance were very trendy. Those precious pieces of jewelry were placed on several circular crystal shelves in the middle of the shop, separated by a layer of transparent protective cover, allowing people to admire their beauty as soon as they walked into the shop. The second floor only received some distinguished female guests. Those who could go up to the second floor were a symbol of status. When Arbor brought people in, there were already 2 or 3 young ladies in the shop, and they were choosing jewelry with their servant girls. When they saw Arbor, one of the ladies could not help but exclaim, "Is that the crown princess?" Chen Baojia threw Ji Xiang, who was shouting beside her, and rolled her eyes impolitely, thinking, "I really shouldn't have come out with this idiot." Chapter 2703. Ji Xiang's face turned slightly pale. She felt that there was something wrong with her. Seeing the little crown princess inexplicably made her heart flutter and her palms sweat slightly. This was a strange symptom that made one's complexion change at the sight of the crown princess. She really didn't dare to provoke this powerful little crown princess. Previously at General Zhong Li's residence, a group of noble ladies had teamed up to ridicule the crown princess. In the end, they were slapped in the face by the crown princess every time. Afterwards, these noble ladies secretly wanted to lure the stingers to sting the crown princess. In the end, the crown princess was unscathed, but they were stung by the stingers until they cried for their parents. The most terrifying thing was that a group of mosquitoes came out of the stingers. Not only did they emit flames, but they also exploded, causing them to cry for their parents. Several noble ladies' hair was burned off. Ji Xiang was also the first to bear the brunt. Her hair was scorched, and her hands and body were injured quite badly. She had been resting for many days. When she heard that a new batch of jewelry had arrived at Precious Painting Workshop, she was itching to come out and meet people. In the end, she didn't expect to meet the little crown princess as soon as she came out. Ji Xiang couldn't help but want to cry now. She hurriedly walked forward and obediently bowed to Arbor. "Greetings to the crown princess." Arbor glanced at her indifferently. "You may dispense with the formalities." Ji Xiang heaved a sigh of relief. Although the little crown princess' attitude was cold, she didn't look like she wanted to make things difficult for her. In fact, Ji Xiang didn't need to worry at all. Arbor was the kind of person who would only slap you to death if you courted death and provoked her. Moreover, once she took revenge on the spot, she would at most ignore you the next time she saw you. She wouldn't attack you again. If you didn't provoke her, why would she go crazy and slap you? Is the crown princess here to take back Precious Painting Workshop today? Who in the imperial capital didn't know that the crown princess had been causing a ruckus in the Mu clan's main branch and taking back her mother's dowry? Ji Xiang tried to strike up a conversation. The little crown princess glanced at her and nodded indifferently. On the side, Chen Baojia gritted her teeth. A slightly stiff smile appeared on her face as she walked forward and bowed. "Greetings to Crown Prince Consort." If it wasn't for Ji Xiang's brainless shout, they could have pretended that they didn't see the crown princess and dispensed with the etiquette. Chen Baojia was so stupid that she had to come forward and salute her. Chen Baojia was angry in her heart, but the smile on her face was more brilliant. The little crown princess recognized Chen Baojia. Of course, he did not have a good impression of her. This person was Empress Dowager Chen's grandniece. As soon as she moved into the Crown Prince Palace, she sent little Eunuch Li to test her bottom line. She even wanted to stay in the Crown Prince's residence and steal her husband. She didn't have a good impression of her at first glance. Arbor put on an even colder face and didn't let Chen Baojia get up. He just stared at Chen Baojia coldly. Ji Xiang's heart was slightly startled. She stood there trembling with fear as she curiously sized up Chen Baojia. That day, they had angered the crown princess together. She didn't expect the crown princess to be so rude to Chen Baojia while her attitude towards her was still alright. Did something happen between the two of them that she didn't know about? Chen Baojia gritted her teeth and forced a smile. She lowered her head and squatted slightly. She was so angry that her heart was trembling. Her voice revealed a bit of grievance. "Crown Princess?" The little crown princess didn't even look at her and directly led her people out of precious painting workshop. Next shop. Chapter 2704. Chen Baojia was so angry that she straightened up and her lips trembled when she saw her leave without looking back. She stomped her feet and said to Ji Xiang beside her, "It's all your fault. Why did you greet that woman?" He had caused her to suffer such a great humiliation. She was so angry that her entire body trembled slightly. Ji Xiang was also very puzzled and asked, "Baojia, what happened between you and the crown princess?" Chen Baojia said with a sullen face, "What can happen? It's all because that person is petty and can't stand the Empress Dowager. I'm more shameless than her." Ever since the crown princess entered the palace, the Empress Dowager had never summoned her. Instead, Chen Baojia would enter the palace every few days to eat and chat with the Empress Dowager. Wasn't Chen Baojia more shameless in front of the Empress Dowager? Thinking of this, Chen Baojia's anger eased a little. With a cold face, she glanced at the empty shop and snorted, "I think there's no need to come to Zhen painting workshop in the future." "Baojia, why do you say that?" Ji Xiang asked in surprise. Was this person a pig's brain? Chen Baojia glanced at her resentfully and said, "Now that the shop has been taken back by the crown princess, think about it. Can a girl from the village manage Zhen painting workshop well? Does she know about jewelry trends? Does she know what kind of beauty products are suitable for the young ladies of aristocratic families?" Chen Baojia smiled sarcastically. She doesn't know anything and rashly snatched Zhen painting workshop from Madame Mu's hands. "I think Zhen painting workshop won't be able to operate for long. Sooner or later, it will be ruined by her." "Baojia." Ji Xiang clutched her sleeves tightly and glanced at Chen Baojia timidly. "Let's be careful with our words. Look at you. I only scared you in Zhong Li's residence and you're scared out of your wits." Chen Baojia glanced at her unhappily. "Let's go." Ji Xiang hurriedly followed up and the two of them left Zhenhua workshop. When Chen Baojia returned to the residence, she called for her personal maidservant, "Bring 2 servants and go to Changle Street to buy a few hooligans to help me spread the news. Say that the crown princess, the village girl, doesn't know what's good for her and forced her legal mother to hand over Zhen painting workshop. However, she's just a village woman from a small mountain village in the Lower Star region. She doesn't have such good eyesight. The precious painting workshop in the future won't be as good as before. Only village girls will be willing to buy things from Zhen painting workshop." Chen Baojia said sarcastically with a sneer on the corner of her mouth. Chen Baojia's personal maidservant naturally knew about the grudges between her young miss and the crown princess. She nodded and, with her face covered, led the 2 servants to the alley of Changle Street to look for the little scoundrel. In the end, he couldn't find the 2 scoundrels even after looking around. The only 2 little scoundrels, upon hearing that they were to accept the order to spread the news of the crown prince consort, both of them ran faster than rabbits with pale faces. It was as if there was a ghost chasing them from behind, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Chen Baojia's personal maidservant suppressed her anger and went back to report the matter. Chen Baojia couldn't help but be at her wit's end. However, she suffered a few losses at the hands of Arbor and was unwilling to let go of Jojo just like that. Thus, she invited a few young ladies to the Chen residence under the guise of a gathering of her close friends and intentionally or unintentionally revealed the news about Zhen painting workshop to others. Chapter 2705. The news spread like wildfire, and in less than an afternoon, those noble ladies also knew that Zhen Art Lane had changed owners. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Arbor looked as if she was strolling through a garden. She finished touring her mother's dozens of dowry shops and inspected the farmlands and fields. After making sure that all the handover personnel were in place, she then brought Li Yi, Kai Xiu, and Kai Chi back to the Mu residence. Although she had been shopping for an entire day, the little fellow was still in high spirits. "Crown Princess." Zhao Tingdong stepped forward and bowed. He hurriedly said, "His Majesty has sent word that he wants to keep your highness in the South Study to discuss politics tonight." When the little crown princess heard that, she couldn't help but frown. She cursed inwardly, but didn't show any expression on her face. She only replied with an "oh" and sent eunuch Zhao away. Auntie Jing watched from the side and secretly sighed in admiration. The little crown princess didn't ask eunuch Zhao why the crown prince stayed in the south study to discuss important matters. It could be seen that she was a girl with a sense of propriety. Although she wasn't too happy, she didn't show any expression on her face. The little fellow slumped on the bed listlessly and waved her hand to dismiss everyone. She took out a communication jade tablet from her inner world and saw a line of words floating. "Baby, I'll be back early tomorrow morning. Have a good meal and rest early." Sir Jojo rolled his eyes. He didn't even bother to take a bath and didn't want to do anything. He directly rolled onto the bed and went to sleep. The next morning, when Arbor opened her eyes, she felt a head rubbing against her side. She took a closer look and saw that the guy was looking at her with a grin on his face. "You're stinky." He reached out to poke her little face and carefully looked at her attire. She didn't even take off her outer clothes before rolling onto the bed, and sleeping Arbor instantly felt a little embarrassed. She originally came back in high spirits yesterday and wanted to tell him about the day's results. Who knew that he wouldn't be coming back? The little fellow instantly lost her energy. The exhaustion from a day of tossing and turning immediately rushed up, and she fell asleep without doing anything. "Is it because you can't see me that you're unhappy and went to sleep in a huff?" She hit the nail on the head. However, Sir Jojo would never admit it. Rolling her eyes at him, Xiao Mu groaned as she tried to get up, but to her surprise, he reached out and hugged her, bouncing her off the bed. "Jojo, you need to change your habit of not talking in the morning. Change your sister. You must be secretly saying in your heart, 'Change my sister.'" "Arbor, that's not right, Jojo." Prince Mo carried her to the basin and handed her a wet handkerchief to wipe her face. "Did it go well yesterday?" Arbor's spirit was slightly lifted, but when he thought about how he didn't come home last night, he didn't want to talk to him. She snorted and turned the back of her head towards him. The crown prince was secretly amused. He hugged her from behind and rubbed his head against her neck. "It must be very smooth. With Jojo in charge, everything will be settled." That was. The little fellow turned his head and looked at him. "I'm afraid your father didn't make you stay overnight on purpose, did he?" The crown prince couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and said, "That's not it." He pulled her to sit in front of the dressing mirror, picked up an exquisitely crafted ivory tusk inlaid with purple rubies, and gently combed her long hair. "There was a sudden piece of news yesterday. Not far from the border town where we landed in China, there was a sudden monster attack in a small city called Luan City." Chapter 2706. I stayed in the South Study to look at the information, and while I was at it, I told Father about the Tianyun organization and the zombie. Arbor nodded. Since this matter was so important, she naturally had to mention it to the Emperor as soon as possible. She also didn't want the perfectly fine Great Divine Continent to become like Xikong Xing. In fact, Xikong Xing was much better in this life than in her previous life. At least, the zombie situation didn't spread as badly as it did in her previous life. As long as they learned to control this matter, they could always control the situation within a certain range. "Did your father say anything?" More shocked, right? Prince Mo thought of his father's hand last night and couldn't help but curl his lips. "Ignorant guy." Arbor glanced at the crown prince's expression and wanted to laugh a little. "We must pay attention to this matter in Luan City." As Crown Prince Mo spoke, his hands didn't stop. He helped his wife tie up her hair into a simple yet lively bun, then picked out the hairpin he had made himself from the hairpin case and inserted it into her hair without hesitation. Seeing his wifey change into a purple muslin dress and walk out from behind the screen, the crown prince's eyes lit up, and he stepped forward to hold her. "Jojo, you're getting prettier by the day." Arbor wasn't like other girls, who probably blushed at a compliment. Instead, she was a little smug, thinking that Prince Mo was very right. "I'll go patrol again today to see how the handover of the shops is going." Arbor raised her little head. "I'll go with you. Go to sleep." Arbor cast him an annoyed glance. This person didn't sleep last night. Didn't he need to catch up on sleep? Prince Mo shook her little hand. "I'll catch up on sleep in the carriage." "No need. You still have to attend that palace banquet tonight. You won't have the energy." Arbor tugged at his sleeve. Go to sleep. Prince Mo's eyes lit up. He hugged Arbor and whispered, Jojo, are you worried about your husband? Arbor gave him a look that said, aren't you talking nonsense? He reached out and patted his butt with his little paw. Go to sleep. Soon after, he turned around and called for Kai Xiao and the others. Then he ordered the carriage to set out. Prince Mo froze there for a long time, the tips of his ears involuntarily turning red. Only after a long time did he come to his senses. Oh my God, was I being teased by Lord Jojo just now? Arbor had no idea that she had just flirted with a certain someone. She was just a little careless. Just as he got into the carriage and was about to leave, he was interrupted by Qi Xuanxuan's surprised shriek. Ah, my Jojo. Qi Xianxian jumped onto the carriage and hugged her, wanting to kiss her. I missed you so much, Jojo. Arbor hurriedly reached out to cover her mouth. Unable to take it anymore, he said, You, stop. You guys have completed your advancement. You stink all over. Hurry and bathe. As if. Qi Xianxian nodded. She pulled up her sleeves and sniffed. She almost fainted from the stench. Wah, I really stink. Arbor was speechless and wanted to laugh. He pushed her face away and looked at little Fatty, Mata, Duan Muqing and the rest who ran over. I've prepared rooms for you. Eunuch Zhao, get someone to bring them to the courtyard to rest and wash up. All right everyone please. Jojo, are you going out? Wait for me to go with you. No need. You guys have advanced for so long. Rest for a day. I'll be back in the evening. I'll leave first. Chapter 2707. Arbor couldn't stand Qi Xuanxuan's stench any longer. She hurriedly lowered the curtains and called out, Let's go, let's go. She looked like she was running away. Mata laughed heartily and teased Qi Xianxian, You're the one who's leaving. Qi Xianxian snorted when she heard this. You don't stink? Smell yourself, you stink 100 times more than me. You stinker. Everyone was noisily led by Eunuch Zhao to their respective rooms to bathe and rest. As for Arbor, she sat alone in the carriage and couldn't help but smile faintly when she thought of Xianxian and the others. They'd caused quite a commotion when they'd broken through in the back mountain of the Mu residence. Even old Patriarch Mu had been alerted and had gone to the back mountain to investigate. However, when he found out that a few of his young friends had broken through here, the old man had thoughtfully instructed everyone in the Mu residence not to disturb them. Arbor was happier than anyone that Xianxian and the others had successfully broken through this time. She'd taken a rough look at their cultivation levels just now. Xianxian had already entered the 6th level of the spirit realm. The little Fatty, Mata, Lu Yu, and Hua Tao had all entered the 9th level of the spirit realm. Jiang Shaoxin had also successfully reached the 8th level of the spirit realm. Only Duan Muqing's cultivation level was something she couldn't determine. It was obvious that his cultivation level was now above hers. Arbor felt a bit happy when she thought of being able to gather with her friends again and roam the world together. It would be even better if she could meet up with senior brother Situ and the others one day. Since she had nothing to do, Arbor took out a book of poisons and flipped through it. She leaned against the soft cushions in the carriage and read line by line. Actually, she seemed to have read these books thousands of times. She could clearly remember which herbs were on which page and which line. Arbor thought of yesterday when she thought of this. Qing Yang had mocked and ridiculed her yesterday. The gist of her words was that she didn't understand the business of Precious Painting Workshop. If she took over Precious Painting Workshop, the shop would probably close down in 2 months. It seemed that some rumors had started to spread again. Arbor didn't need to ask around to know that Miss Chen, who she'd met at Precious Painting Workshop yesterday, wouldn't let go of this opportunity to smear her name. However, none of this mattered anymore. To a nouveau riche, whether or not this small precious art workshop could continue to operate stably and whether or not it could make a lot of money was not a big problem. What she wanted to do was to get the item back from Mu Jingfeng. Regardless of whether she could manage it well or not, she just couldn't let Mu Jingfeng benefit from it. The little guy thought for a moment, then used his divine sense to push open the inner world gate and looked through the inner world. Then he summoned Zheng'an's divine sense avatar, who was training his divine sense on its own, into his inner world. After her conscious had evolved, her spiritual sense body had also evolved into a spiritual sense body. Moreover, ever since her inner world had expanded to 500 cubic meters, she had become much more powerful than before. Not only did it contain 3,000 statues, but it was also filled with gold, silver, jewels, and mountains of gold and silver. She let her spiritual consciousness jump in, but there was almost no place to land. Stepping on a pile of gold, silver, pearls, and jades, it made people speechless. Every time she looked at her inner world, she would get a headache. Lately, she had been trying her best not to open her inner world. Now that her conscious had entered the deity realm, she could take anything in her inner world without any effort. She remembered that there were several small copper boxes buried under the pile of pearls and jades. She let her spiritual consciousness rummage through the jewelry and saw her all-purpose food box. Chapter 2708. She simply let her divine sense clone open the all-purpose food box and took out a meat bun. She held it in her hand and took a bite without hesitation. It was warm and soft, and the taste of the bun was especially good. No wonder Shaolin kept saying that she wanted to eat a bun all day after eating one. Thinking of her soft and cute little sister, Arbor's eyes softened. Intentionally or unintentionally, her gaze moved towards the 3,000 stone sculptures. There was finally an open space behind the stone sculptures. In addition to the strangely shaped snake-shaped sculpture howling at the sky, there was also a golden martial ant walking around like she had ADHD. Ever since she had asked Golden Martial Ant to come out and help Jojo, Jojo had let her stay in his inner world. It was as if this Golden Martial Ant couldn't stop walking around the snake-shaped sculpture all day long. It gave Jojo a headache. Arbor was helpless. Just as she was about to retract her gaze, her line of sight suddenly paused, and her divine sense suddenly stopped on the snake-shaped stone sculpture. Could it be that she was hallucinating just now? Why did she seem to see the snake-shaped eyes of the stone sculpture suddenly move, as if the eyeballs under the eyelids rolled a circle? Don't scare me. Arbor used her divine sense to carefully scan the snake-shaped sculpture again. Seeing that it didn't move at all, she was slightly relieved. She must have been seeing things just now. She had been scaring herself all day and making a fuss about nothing. Arbor couldn't help but secretly laugh at herself for being timid. She retracted her divine sense and looked at the divine sense clone rummaging through the pile of jewelry to find a small copper box. Finally, the tiny figure pulled out several small copper chests from the pile of jewels. Arbor didn't know why, but a strange feeling slid through her heart. She felt that there were a dozen or so small copper boxes buried below, and she also felt that she should open these small boxes to take a look when she was feeling doubtful. Thus, when she opened the box, it was full of books and letters. The books were stacked up. There were a lot of books. Arbor's divine sense moved slightly and took out 3 of the small boxes. She then chased her divine sense clone back to Paradise Planet to continue training her divine sense. What are these books? Arbor flipped through the books and saw many books that she found familiar. She casually picked up a book and flipped through it. Seeing the small handwriting left behind when she was studying, she inexplicably felt that it was somewhat familiar. He took a pen and paper and wrote something down. Then he put down the pen. He looked at his own handwriting and then at the book. Well, although they were a little different, it was certain that both handwriting were hers. In the past, her handwriting was a little immature, but now her handwriting was even more vigorous, and her strokes were both good in form and spirit. Heaving a sigh of relief, Arbor picked up a letter and flipped it open. His eyes couldn't help but redden. It really was her master's handwritten letter. On the bottom left corner of the first page, there were the words, Dark Phoenix. He flipped through a few handwritten books. One of them was about how to train people, and the other was about how to quickly become a shop owner. From the buying and selling of the store, to the location of the store, to the interior decoration style, everything was done in great detail. The strangest thing was that one of the handwritten books recorded the method of running a restaurant. It was written on how to set up chairs outside the store, how to get the staff to dress uniformly, how to improve the menu, and so on. Many of the methods seemed to coincide with Madame Mu's methods. Arbor's eyebrows moved slightly. Chapter 2709. There were many names of dishes that she had never heard of before in this book. At the bottom, there were small annotations, names of dishes and cooking methods. Most of them indicated which shop's signature dish on the mainland and what's special about it. Arbor was a little dumbfounded. She flipped through another handbook. There were many drawings of jewelry and other kinds of flowers. There were also many cute little animals that were made into dolls. All kinds of novel gadgets were clearly recorded in these handbooks. Arbor casually flipped through and saw several new necklaces. They were actually similar to the jewelry in the precious painting workshop. What was going on? He vaguely saw a little girl of about 7 or 8 years old sitting in front of a table covered with snow-white rice paper. She raised her head and asked softly, "Master, Master, do I have to memorize all of this and all of this?" "Little treasure, you just have to memorize the medical and poison books. As for the rest, you can keep them. If you need them one day, you can just flip through them." "Master, Master, how can these animals be drawn so cute? What are these? Do you like them? Ask your martial uncle to make you a little yellow duck doll someday." "Master, Master, but I like this pig." Why do you like mini pigs? This little yellow duck looks much better than pigs." "I like this little pig." "All right, ask your martial uncle to make one for you someday." "Master, why don't you make one for little treasure?" Could Xian Huang say that she was handicapped? Obviously not. Yes, her handicap was not as good as her junior martial sister. There was still her junior martial sister to enslave. "My little treasure, have you finished the lollipop that Master prepared for you last time? Children shouldn't eat too much candy. You'll have tooth decay." A voice floated over. Arbor knew that it was the voice of her martial uncle. Don't mind your martial uncle. We didn't eat too much, right? Xian Huang, don't lead the child astray. Call me senior martial sister. Impudent fellow. Thump. The carriage stopped for a moment. Arbor's thoughts flashed. When he came back to his senses, he found that the carriage had stopped. She hurriedly put away these letters that she treasured so much and put them back into the box and into her inner world. Her vision was a little misty. "Crown Princess, we have arrived at Precious Painting Workshop." Kai Xiu reminded her and reached out to open the curtain for the Crown Princess. At a glance, he saw the little girl kneeling on the soft cushion of the carriage. Her eyes were red as she looked over. Her eyes were obviously tainted with a wisp of mist. She looked like a pitiful little animal. Sai Xiu immediately became nervous. She looked back and forth inside the carriage and hurriedly asked, "Crown Prince Consort, what happened?" The little Crown Princess' pitiful and aggrieved look really made one's heart ache. "It's nothing." The little Crown Princess adjusted her mood. She sniffed her little nose, held Kai Xiu's hand, and got off the carriage. "I just thought of some past events. I miss them and feel a little upset." Kai Xiu heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but laugh. "Crown Princess, we have just recovered so many properties. Your friends have also successfully advanced. There are more happy things than sad things, right?" Kai Chi also chattered and laughed. Yes, Crown Princess, you can't be depressed. We still have to continue fighting today." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.